The hero of this story always dreamed essentially from behind the shadows, and when he is reborn in a new world, he finally succeeds. Without anyone noticing, he becomes the Shadow, the secret leader of an organization called Shadow Garden, a force beyond the living that is about to change the fate of the entire world. And if you want to change your own fate, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much to everyone for the support, and let's move on to this video. Right at the beginning, we see a girl named Akane, who is a high school student. She is awakened by the alarm clock, and it seems she passed out after a horrible night. Clearly, she is not very excited to deal with the background characters in her school. In the shower, she cries while thinking about going to school. She opens the door of her house, and at that moment, a bad memory invades her mind. She wakes from this trance when the driver calls her. Akane enters the car and heads to school. Upon arriving, several students pay attention to her, showing us that she is extremely popular. Akane approaches a boy she has been sitting next to for the past months, and she greets him, but becomes irritated when Sid gets her name wrong once again. This makes her feel that she is not as important as she thinks, and without wasting time, she corrects Sid with a forced smile. He tries to repeat the correct name again, but he ends up getting it wrong. Sid invents a silly excuse to justify the confusion, saying he fell down the stairs when he was a child, and that made him have difficulty with names. And this excuse is very good, and I will start using it too. But that only worsened poor Akane's mood. She does not know what to feel regarding Sid. They had been side by side for months, and he had never looked directly at her, not even once. Trying to end this subject, Akane changes the topic of the conversation, and Sid apologizes for failing, but he continues getting her name wrong. Later, some students approach Akane and become excited when they learn that she will play the lead role in the school's evening performance. Everyone praises her, since the role would demand even more dedication than last year. Akane admits she is very nervous, but also excited. After that, she goes to the bathroom, and there she remembers the sequence of events that made her abandon her artistic career in elementary school. Meanwhile, Sid spends his time reading a book, and during his reading, he murmurs something about acquiring more power. The boy is thinking he is Virgil from Devil May Cry. But anyway, near the end of the class, the teacher asks for a volunteer to total the answers from the school festival survey. Akane volunteers, but she is rejected quickly because of her tight schedule and the tutoring classes she would have that day. The teacher then looks at Sid and asks if he could do the work, and he accepts without hesitation. Akane is known for being the teacher's favorite, and also very popular among the students. She does this to avoid hostility, since she believed that by being loved by everyone, the chances of being targeted would decrease greatly. At least that was what she thought, and later at night, Sid plays the piano alone at the school, delivering that impressive sonata. Meanwhile, on the street, some criminals ambush Akane's driver. They end up beating the man until he is left broken, and after several failed attempts to contact him, Akane decides to walk home alone. During the walk, she enters an alley that seems far too quiet, and suddenly, she feels she is being watched, which leaves her even more frightened. In panic, she tries to find a way to escape that terrifying situation. While she searches for a route of escape, the same two criminals who attacked her driver surprise her. One of them restrains her with a chokehold and tries to cover her mouth, to leave her unconscious before taking her to the hideout. Meanwhile, Sid had been following the criminals silently, observing every step, only waiting for the right moment to act. When Akane awakens, she realizes she is tied up and becomes terrified. She tries to scream, but one of the kidnappers, who is a former soldier, tells her to stay quiet or she will become a statistic. He makes it clear that she made a mistake by walking alone through the city at night, especially considering her father's influence. The former soldier states that the ransom request has already been sent, and the other criminal is more interested in Akane's body than in the money, since he would never be able to touch a woman if it were not through kidnapping. He approaches her, reminding her of the previous kidnapping, the one in which she was targeted by a violent stalker. Akane tries to fight the criminals, but she has no chance against them. The man says he intends to bring back the memories of when horrible things happened to her. At that moment, Sid, who had been observing everything from outside, put on a mask, grabbed a crowbar, and broke into the hideout. Sid responds, saying that his name is Stylish Roofing Slayer, and that is an extremely strange name. It would have been better if he had simply called himself Batman. And without wasting time, and to our happiness, Sid kills that miserable criminal who was trying to assault Akane. Now, only he and the former soldier remain. After a brief exchange of taunts, Sid accepts the challenge, even knowing he was facing a trained soldier. He begins by using his crowbar as if it were a training staff, but he changes his style when he notices it was not working. Now he starts to use it the same way he did when facing biker gang, with raw strength and direct strikes. Hearing this, the former soldier realizes that Sid is not only a stylish killer, he is the legendary crowbar monster, and that nickname is far better than the other one. Sid finally manages to land a direct hit on the former soldier, and keeps striking until the man becomes completely motionless. Then, he grabs a knife and cuts the ropes that tied Akane. Before leaving, he gives her a piece of advice so she will be more careful when returning home alone. He was not satisfied with his own performance, and if fighting a simple soldier was already difficult, he imagines what it would be like to face a group of armed single mothers. A fight like that would certainly be complicated. After that, Sid disappears, and Akane calls the police. The situation could have been much worse and even reached the media, destroying Akane's career once again. But thanks to her father's connections, the case is silenced and nothing becomes public. In the end, Akane does not discover who this stylish killer is, or the crowbar monster, call him whatever you want. She never imagined that this masked vigilante was the same boy who had been trying to avoid her at all costs. The next morning, Akane goes to school full of joy, and in the locker room, she encounters Sid once again. This time, he greets her correctly, and for the first time Akane sees Sid look directly into her eyes. Later, a news report announces an accident that had happened on a city road involving Sid, who was run over by the Ike's truck. And here our entire expectation is shattered, since it did not last long and the boy has already died. He had died on the scene, and the police stated that the driver was not watching the road at the moment of the impact, and an investigation would be opened to clarify what really happened. Then, the story shows Sid when he was still a child. From a young age, he had this obsession with becoming a superhero like Batman. He did not even know exactly where this had come from. He only knew that he wanted deeply to be a hero at any cost. Different from the passing dream every child has, his dream acted like a constant flame. A flame that never went out and pushed him forward. Sid trained with everything he could. He tried to master any skill that could make him stronger. At school, he was an ordinary boy, completely harmless. But when he put on his mask, he became something entirely different. While others grew up and abandoned this phase of wanting to be superheroes, Sid moved in the opposite direction, becoming more and more determined. He kept training, believing that one day he would achieve his dream. But the moment arrived when he had to accept the reality that he would never be able to become a Super Saiyan. In the real world, martial arts were the limit, and even if he mastered all of them, he would still have a gun pointed at his head if he ever fought armed soldiers. In that scenario, he did not have much to do besides giving up. Unless he became the strongest martial artist in the world, maybe then he could face an entire army alone. But there was still a problem. If a nuclear bomb hit him, he would be vaporized, so there would not be much he could do. So his greatest dream was to become so powerful that not even a nuclear bomb could destroy him. And since the impossible does not exist for Sid, he moves toward this objective. He accepted nothing less than absolute power. Now, in another reality, we see him using his powers as the Eminence in shadow, surrounded by his group. They talk about a threat they had just cornered in the city. The target had nowhere else to run, so Sid confirms that everything occurred exactly as he predicted. His subordinates praise his insight and the care with which he had planned everything. They were about to celebrate their first important hunt in a long time. And Sid, on the other hand, is satisfied with the team's work, even without exactly understanding what they are doing that is so important. But deep down, he is happy. After dying in his first life, Sid earned a second chance. And in this new world, he was living his childhood dream of becoming a hero. But he was not the usual hero, since he had magic added to the abilities he had already mastered. Even so, he was still not satisfied. With magic and combat, he was on the path to becoming one of the most powerful beings in that world. Sid then tells his group that there is a peak and everyone must reach that apex, and that they must run to get there. This time, he is determined to reach that peak no matter the cost. He thinks to himself that he would give everything, absolutely everything, to achieve his goal. Sid never wanted to be the main hero or the final villain. What he wants to be is the shadow, the one who acts behind everything and reveals his own greatness within the darkness. He confesses this to the young Alpha. She responds by saying that everything he said made sense. She found some ancient texts describing something that seemed to be the cult of Diablos. Sid confirms that this matches his suspicions, and Alpha continues saying that the more they research and learn, the more they discover how powerful the cult is. Before she finishes, Sid completes her sentence. They hide in the shadows, and we hunt the shadows. That was what he truly wanted to become, the eminence in the shadows. However, he jokes by saying that Alpha is a little slow to keep up with his reasoning. The scene shifts to the police finding the body of a boy. The owner of that body was Sid himself, who, in the last summer of high school, gave up trying to become strong in a world without magic and threw himself in front of a vehicle. He ended up being reborn as a baby, the son of a wealthy couple. The father celebrates, saying that his oldest daughter, Claire, always wanted a little brother and would be very happy with the arrival of the little one. The mother comments that something is strange, the baby is not crying, but then he finally cries, and she concludes she was just imagining things. Now reborn, Sid thinks he had no idea how or why he ended up there, but that does not matter. What matters is that the air is filled with magical energy, something that in his previous life existed only in dreams and fairy tales. Now he can claim this overwhelming power for himself, and that is all that matters. He was reborn as the son of Baron Kagino, an aristocrat who lives in the countryside. For generations, that family had produced warriors who reinforced their bodies with magic. Everyone had great expectations for a genius of the family, but that genius was not him. It was his older sister. Sid grows in the shadow of his talented sister, living the life of an ordinary knight, trying to stay hidden as much as possible from society. Later, we see him facing some bandits, using magic after politely asking them to return what they stole. They refused, and in their fight he defeats them. He then collects what they had taken, and while examining the place, he sees a cage. He approaches, thinking it is a slave, but he finds a strange lump of flesh that is still alive. This indicates that the person was possessed. He senses that same magical frequency and realizes what is happening. It is a mana overflow. Sid decides to use that body as an experiment, since it was not his and he would not be at risk. He starts injecting magic and testing things, trying different methods, an entire month of exciting experiments that led nowhere, until he finally understands how to contain the magical collapse. To his surprise, the body returns to normal, revealing a young woman. He is impressed that that strange lump of flesh returned to normal. Without knowing what to do, he decides to perform his first act as the eminence in the shadows. The girl awakens, frightened to still be alive, and Sid, now playing his role, says that he broke the curse that consumed her, setting her free. She asks what curse he is talking about, and he explains that a terrible spell was cast upon her and upon all the descendants of the ancient heroes. He shows a book containing a tale of sacred scriptures, the story of the 3 heroes who defeated the demon Diablos and saved the world. He says that this story is true, and in his last breath, Diablos cast a curse that turned the descendants of the heroes into possessed creatures, but someone distorted the story, turning the descendants of the heroes into targets of contempt. He decides not to reveal who is responsible, claiming that it is too early and that doing so would put her life in great danger. But the young woman insists, saying she does not care about the risk. Sid then reveals that her enemy is the cult of Diablos, a fanatic group that plans to revive the great demon. They never appear under the light of day, and his mission is to act in the shadows and stop the evil plans of the cult of Diablos. He formally introduces himself as Shadow, the one who stalks in the shadows to hunt the shadows. And after this incredible monologue, he explains that his path will not be easy, and that he still needs to complete his missions. Then he asks the young woman if she is prepared to walk at his side. The girl says she lost everything, but since he saved her, she will follow whatever he desires. She will walk with him and punish the guilty, and accepts this willingly, naming their organization Shadow Garden and giving herself the name Alpha. And after inventing this entire story and performing his first improvised act with mastery, 3 years passed. He is now 13 years old as a knight in training. He continues being only an ordinary boy. The crimes and the combat of this world are quite simple, and since he came from a life in the age of information, he was able to merge several martial arts and optimize them, creating a very unique style. We see him fighting against his sister, Claire, but she defeats Sid easily, believing that he has not improved at all. A maid calls Claire, saying that her mother is calling her, and that the guests for her farewell party have arrived. Claire says goodbye to him and asks the maid to clean him up. Sid believes that he needs to act as a background character if he wants to be prepared for the great day he knows will come. At 15, all nobles must attend the Midgar Academy for knights in the royal capital. But on the day of Claire's departure, she goes out to buy cigarettes and disappears, just like many people's fathers. Since Alpha had already gathered other members for Shadow Garden, the group begins the search for Claire. They discover that she was kidnapped by the cult of Diablos, captured by a high-ranking officer since she is a descendant of one of the heroes. Using a map, they depart that same night to rescue her, and Claire was chained somewhere. The group ends up attacking and defeating the kidnapper, but he managed to escape by very little, forcing them to split up. Sid ends up finding the man alone, and he humiliates him greatly before defeating him. But before dying, the kidnapper warns that the darkness of the world is far deeper than they imagine. Sid sees a pendant belonging to the man's daughter and takes it, ending his mission. The next day, Claire returns to Malmer Manor, pretending that nothing happened, and then finally leaves for the Royal Academy. Sid would have liked to go with her at that moment, but he still needs to put the girls to work, so he says goodbye to them. Later, Sid is on a train, thinking about what Alpha and the others said about the cult being a large organization. Operating on a global scale, he finds it impressive. After all, they had to spread across the world to fight it. However, Sid believes they may have misinterpreted things and that perhaps the cult does not even exist in the enormous way they imagine. Even so, he does not blame them. He himself would have drawn such conclusions when he was younger. Remembering this, he smiled. Then he says he will continue fighting to become the eminence in the shadows, even if he ends up being the last man in the world to follow that path. Later, Sid arrives in the capital of the Kingdom of Midgar, and he looks at a tall and majestic building, remembering when he was enrolled in the same school as his sister, the Midgar Knight Academy. He recalls that the school was intended for the most promising students, both from the kingdom and from outside it. Even so, he does not understand how he was accepted, since he considered himself only a secondary character. After waking up and arriving at the academy, he saw his two best friends, Skew and Poe, waiting for him. They noticed that his hair looked different from the last time, but they did not spend time on that subject because they needed to run to catch the train. After running a bit, they managed to board, but the car was already almost completely full. On the train, Sid comments that he would like to live in the dormitory, like the elite student. His friends smile, saying that it is almost impossible, since the dormitories are only for royalty and high-ranking nobles, not for people like them. Sid, however, believes there is a path for them to become honor students, like Claire did, and earn a spot there. To accomplish this, they need to win the Bushin Festival. His friends think this idea is even more absurd. Shortly after, Sid remembers the bet he had made with them. Apparently, they had agreed that whoever got the worst grade on the exam would have to confess his love to the most desired girl in the school and be brutally rejected by her. Nothing will remain of the fool who does that. For Sid, this is a very important event, since he never had the courage to expose himself like this in his previous life. But now he is in a completely different world, studying at an academy that does not even care. When they arrive at the school, they spot the girl from the bet, Princess Alexia. A student is kneeling in front of her, offering flowers in front of several other students. He speaks like a true noble, elegant and confident, but Alexia rejects him immediately. Seeing this, Sid's friends say he cannot back out now. They are determined to make him fulfill his bet. Sid, on the other hand, is optimistic. He just wants to finish quickly, since he is absolutely certain that Alexia will reject him at once. Later, he finds her in the forest while his friends watch him from hiding. Then Sid delivers the worst, most embarrassing, and most awkward love confession in history, stuttering and looking as if he is about to faint. After he finishes his confession, he only waits for the rejection, because he did everything in the most humiliating way possible. But to his surprise, Alexia ends up accepting. She says she had been waiting for someone like him, and so Sid and his friends are left in complete shock, unable to believe what they just witnessed. The news that Sid is dating Princess Alexia spreads through the entire school, and in the cafeteria everyone looks at him in a very strange way, trying to understand how someone like him managed something so impossible. Many believe it must have been some misunderstanding. Sid, however, is not comfortable with this at all, since he wanted to use the princess for fun. But in the end, it was she who began using him as an object. Sitting with his friends, they insist that he is not worthy of dating Alexia, but Sid believes she must have some hidden motive for accepting him. His friend, however, tell him to enjoy it, since she is the most desired girl in the school. At that moment, Alexia appears and sits at the table with them, confirming the rumors even more. She receives a different meal, with enormous portions, and Sid's friends wonder how she will eat all of that. Alexia replies that she never finishes everything and that she would not mind sharing with lower-class students. Hearing this, Sid begins his operation, "Break up with me now." He sticks his chopsticks into her food and takes a piece, something unthinkable for a noble. But instead of ending the relationship, she invites him to take sword lessons with her. even though Sid says he already trained in the lower division. She explains that she secured a spot for him in Session 1. This session is reserved for high-ranking nobles. And on the first day of class, Instructor Zenon explains how the training works. Students are paired so he can evaluate strikes and counterstrikes, and, of course, Sid ends up being placed to fight against his own girlfriend, exactly as she wanted. During the match, Sid notices that she is not actually that good. Her style is very basic, rigid, and not creative, far inferior to her sister Claire, who is famous as the strongest knight in the kingdom. Even so, he recognizes Alexia's efforts as she slowly advances by improving her fundamentals. After the fight, Alexia thanks him and praises his fighting style, but says she hates it because it resembles hers too much. Sid has no time to think about this, because he sees Zenon approaching to confront Alexia about choosing him as her boyfriend. Zenon accuses her of acting like a child trying to run away from responsibility, especially because she had been promised to him through an arranged marriage. Later, Sid questions Alexia about not wanting to marry Zenon and using him for this, as a simple tool to escape that engagement. Alexia indirectly confirms it by dismissing his words, saying that he is not innocent either, since he only approached her because he lost a bet. She reveals she discovered this through his friends, then threatens to report everything to the student council and turn his life at the academy into real hell. She insists that Sid keep pretending to be her boyfriend, at least until Zenon stops chasing her. Sid highly doubts that will happen anytime soon, but Alexia seems to have a plan. After a lot of insistence, Sid remains firm and says no, until she takes out a gold coin and tosses it to him. At first, Sid tries to maintain a cold and distant posture, asking if she really believes he can be bought so easily. The answer, however, is yes, because he grabs the coin off the ground in less than a second. She begins throwing several coins at him and calls him her loyal little dog. And since Sid is a very clever guy, he accepts without question, and during their staged boyfriend and girlfriend act, Alexia sees Zenon talking to two girls. That irritates her deeply, and she quickens her pace to walk past him. Zenon, in turn, only smirks, satisfied for having provoked her. After class, Sid and Alexia take the train, and Sid is exhausted from hearing Alexia complain about Zenon, and concludes that although she is extremely polite in public, inside she is filled with resentment and insults. They stop to get ice cream, and Sid wonders why she does not cut the line since she is a princess. She replies that she wants everyone to know about their relationship. While they eat their ice cream, Sid finally asks why she refuses to marry someone perfect like Zenon. Alexia answers that she hates everything about him. He may look perfect on the outside, but that only reminds her of the mask she is forced to wear. Inside, he is certainly filled with flaws. She just does not know which ones yet. She states she has nothing specifically against Sid because he is full of imperfections, unlike Zenon. On the way home, she comments once again about Sid's sword style, which is mysterious and unique, and says she still despises him because of it. Sid then criticizes her technique, saying she is putting too much strength into her strikes. She defends herself, explaining that she always wanted to reach her sister's level and that she trained alone from zero trying to catch up. Even so, she is constantly compared to Claire, being called an ordinary swordswoman. Sid understands one reason. His style is very similar to hers, but he does not care about that. Instead, he praises Alexia's dedication. Immediately, she draws her sword and points it at him, and Sid does not even move. She demands to know what he meant with that compliment, and Sid explains that it does not mean anything special, and that he only gets annoyed when people speak badly about the things he likes. And in this case, he likes the way she fights. Moments later, the train arrives at their stop, and Alexia says goodbye and leaves. And with that, Sid believes their forced relationship has finally ended. The next day, he arrives at school with his friends, who apologize for revealing the bet to Alexia. He forgives them. But then they notice several knights from the Order of the Knight at the school entrance. The knights approach and inform Sid about the sudden disappearance of the princess, and since he was the last person seen with her, he is now the main suspect. Sid realizes the size of the trouble he is in, and meanwhile, Alexia wakes up in an unknown place. She realizes the horror of the situation when she sees she is restrained by magical chain. The room is strange, dark, and she has no idea where she is. For a moment, she even considers the absurd possibility that Sid could have been responsible. Scanning the area with her eyes, she finds a monstrous one-eyed creature, also chained, clearly subjected to experiments and brutal torture. Soon after, a strange man wearing a lab coat enters the room with a manic smile. celebrating the fact that he finally obtained royal blood. Alexia stays calm while he completely ignores her presence, continuing to monologue about royal blood. When she manages to get his attention, she asks what the purpose of all that is. He answers that her blood can be used to resurrect demons in the current era. Alexia does not fully understand what he means, but she mocks him by saying she became wet just from hearing that. Meanwhile, the Order of the Night is torturing Sid, believing he kidnapped Alexia. They interrogate him, obtaining no answers at all. They become extremely irritated, deciding to increase the intensity of the torture. They use long claw-like needles and pierce his thigh. Sid screams in despair, begging for his life, swearing he does not know where she is. They believe he is finally telling the truth, but they do not know he is merely acting. He waited his entire life to be tortured while pretending to be a random NPC, and now another one of his dreams has come true. This guy is completely unhinged. Back in the hideout, Alexia believes her sister must already be searching for her. However, she is quite surprised that the search is taking so long. Despite the chaos, the sinister doctor continues extracting Alexia's blood, and with each syringe his enthusiasm grows in a grotesque way. Desperate, Alexia begs him not to take so much blood, saying she is not ready to die. The doctor, however, assures her he will not let her die, because he still wants much more blood. When he tries to collect more once again, the needle cannot pierce her skin, and this infuriates him. In crisis, he screams that he is frustrated for being unable to progress in his research. Taking out his anger, he begins stomping on the head of the monstrous creature chained beside Alexia. She tries once again to distract him, mentioning the blood extraction, trying to make him stop. This leads him to grab a bowl of rice and attempt to force Alexia to eat, pushing the food against her mouth while she resists. According to him, this would increase her blood volume, although Alexia is certain that none of this is for her benefit. The strange creature beside her watches everything in silent awareness. Meanwhile, Zenon goes to Princess Iris, Alexia's sister. Iris praises him for his cooperation, and Zena, however, claims to feel partially responsible for what happened, since the princess disappeared inside the school grounds. Both agree that rescuing Alexia must be the highest priority, and despite the report she received, Iris believes that Sid is responsible for her sister's disappearance. But Zenon argues that Sid would never be capable of defeating someone on Alexia's level, much less capturing her. Iris comments that Sid remained in absolute silence during the 5 days he was imprisoned. She thinks he should be released, but watched closely. Zenon agrees and insists that Sid had nothing to do with the kidnapping. Yet Iris remains disturbed. She hates the idea that students from her sister's academy could be involved in something so serious. In addition, she laments that there is so little help available to search for her sister. Zenon tries to comfort her, saying she should not carry the burden alone, and then asks how he can help. Iris asks him to maintain order inside the academy while she continues the search. Meanwhile, Claire, Sid's sister, is furious that he has been detained for so many days. She demands his release and requests permission to look for him, but she is completely ignored. At the same moment, Iris is overwhelmed by memories of her missing sister. She recalls the rare moments they spent together, almost all of them dueling with swords. It had been a very long time since their last real conversation, and Iris fears she may never have the chance to talk again. A few days later, Sid is finally released and takes a train back home. Still injured, he decides not to treat his wounds, since a background character must endure his hardships. But he soon notices he is being followed. When he gets off the train, the men continue after him, and a woman quickly passes by him and whispers for him to meet her later. When he arrives in his room that night, Sid finds Alpha waiting for him. He is surprised, since he expected Beta, who should be fulfilling her assistant duties. She then updates him on the investigation regarding the cult of Diablos. She assures him that Shadow Garden will help him resolve the princess's kidnapping case, and asks that when everything ends, they be rewarded with dinner. After that, she asks what should be done with the 2 men who tortured him, but Sid answers that they were only performing their duties and that he does not care. Meanwhile, because of all the forced bowls of rice and the blood extracted, Alexia is extremely weakened and can barely speak. Poor her. Meanwhile, we see Sid preparing the entire scene, completely excited, so he can make his perfect entrance. When Delta arrives, he delivers his incredible monologue. While drinking a bit of wine, Delta says everything is ready. She explains that the plan is to launch simultaneous attacks on all the hideouts of the cult of Diablos. Spread across the capital, they will search for traces of Princess Alexia's magic at the same time. But then Sid interrupts her, handing her a letter and saying that tonight the world will know them. Meanwhile, we see the two scoundrels who were torturing Sid earlier, whispering about something. When Sid walks by, they try to incriminate him, saying he is wearing one of Alexia's boots. Then they attempt to kill him, but Sid is quick, kills 3, and cuts off the arm of another. While the man with the severed arm talks nonsense, saying he will never escape from this, Sid goes there and kills him too. Beta watches everything from the corner like a fanatic, noting everything he does. Then an explosion occurs, and we see Delta cutting everyone down. Soon we see Iris talking to some of her guards, wondering what is happening to the world and where her sister is. Then the scene switches to Alexia, who remains imprisoned. She tells the monster that it is a bit difficult to sleep because of the noise from the explosions. But while she is there talking to the monster beside her, the mad doctor suddenly arrives, saying they are coming. He is holding a box filled with syringes containing blood, or some insane mixture of it. He grabs one of the syringes and injects it into the monster, which becomes far stronger. The monster then breaks free, and the first thing it does is kill the doctor, that wretched man. At that moment, instead of killing Alexia, it frees her. Right after, it goes out destroying everything, and Alexia runs away to survive. She grabs the key that was on the doctor's body and frees herself from the remaining shackles, and also takes the sword that was beside his corpse. While she walks toward the exit, she ends up encountering her ex-fiancé. That blonde bastard was funding the doctor's research, so he says he cannot let her leave. She becomes enraged, saying she always thought he was out of his mind. He then provokes her, comparing her to her sister, and she becomes extremely furious and rushes at him. The two begin fighting, and she manages to use her power and wound his arm, copying her sister's movement. After that, he says he will show her the abilities of the rounds, and with a single precise strike he disarms her and leaves her corner. After a well-placed punch to the poor girl's face, he says he will take her away. Then our man arrives, Shadow, and he introduces himself, saying he hides in the shadows to hunt the shadows. The blonde man says he is acting arrogant just because he is attacking some of their bases, but he says that not a single main member of the cult was anywhere near that base. He calls the members of Shadow Garden cowards and says that today they will be hunted by him, one of the main members of the group. In the future, the 12th of the rounds, Xenon Griffey. Right after that blonde scoundrel tries to strike Shadow, he simply disappears from his field of vision, appearing right in front of Alexia, asking where the main member of the cult is. Elsewhere, we see the knights trying to fight the monster, but everything is useless. The creature simply throws everyone far into the air. They try once more, executing a triple strike that tears the creature's back with 3 deep cuts. But in a completely unexpected way, the monster regenerates everything in seconds. Realizing they are not dealing with an ordinary monster, the knights receive immediate orders to gather all nearby units and use full force, even if that means destroying city buildings. The population had already been evacuated, so it is fine. At that moment, Princess Iris arrives on the battlefield, and without hesitation she unleashes violent blows against the monster, preparing to finish it once and for all. The creature rises again as if nothing had happened. The knights are shocked by the creature's absurd endurance, and Iris, furious, cuts off one of its arms, but another one simply grows in its place. The princess is not frightened. On the contrary, her determination increases. She realizes she will only defeat it if she tears it apart completely and scatters its pieces across the ground. Before she can cause the creature more suffering, Alpha arrives in time to stop her, and Iris asks who she is, and the woman calmly answers that her name is Alpha. She then releases a devastating strike that forces the monster to return to a more humanoid form, and even as she approaches, she shows compassion for the creature. When Alpha prepares to leave, Iris demands that she come back, but Alpha simply says that her presentation is over, and that Iris should act like a good spectator and just watch. Before disappearing, Alpha reveals that she is from Shadow Garden and that Iris should keep her distance from them. Iris is paralyzed, trying to understand who or what this mysterious group is. An explosion behind her brings her back to reality, reminding her once again of Alexia. Meanwhile, Sid and that blonde scoundrel keep fighting in front of Alexia amid the ruins of the previous clash. During the battle, Xenon begins to understand why so many members of the cult were defeated by Sid. They simply underestimated him. Seeking to display his true strength, the blonde scoundrel activates a technique called Power of a Future Knight of the Round, but nothing works. Every strike, every charge, Sid ignores everything with ease. Alexia even begins to feel an unexpected admiration for Shadow's strength. not imagining that he is the same Sid who pretended to be her boyfriend. Sid then mocks Zenon, saying that this future Knight of the Round power does not come close to what he achieved as a fighter. This enrages Zenon, who charges with a brutal attack, but Sid dodges as if it were nothing. Alexia is surprised, since his physical abilities are absurd, but his sword style is the same as hers. It is simple, direct, and built from scratch. And suddenly Alexia realizes that Sid is the only person who fights exactly like she does. Zenon reaches his limit and demands that Sid reveal his true identity, since no one that's strong should be a simple student. And Sid answers, "We are Shadow Garden, and we hunt those who live in the shadows." In desperation, the blonde man uses his final card, swallowing pills that amplify his strength beyond human limits. His body transforms and his muscles distort, and he assumes a new form, the Third Awakened. Zenon believes that only those capable of fully controlling the power they carry should be allowed to fight among the Knights of the Round. He then unleashes a new force, which he calls the power of the Almighty, but this only irritates Shadow. He is deeply offended by the fact that Zenon compares himself to a god. For Sid, this is blasphemy, an insult to the true meaning of absolute power. Enraged, Shadow advances and begins delivering brutal strikes against the blonde man. He declares that there is no true strength when someone relies on power that is not their own. And before finishing Zenon, Sid tells a story. He tells the story of a boy who wanted to survive a nuclear bomb. He trained his muscles, his mind, refined his abilities to their highest limit. But even then he could not survive the bomb. Yet he could never give up. So, after years of training, he reached a single conclusion. If he does not want to be vaporized by the bomb, he simply has to become the nuclear explosion itself. He says that the true meaning of all powerful will now be engraved in his mind. It is then that he uses the most absurd strike in all anime, I am atomic. The explosion completely vaporizes Zenon, and Iris witnesses the blast from a distance. Terrified, she immediately runs to the location, hoping to find Alexia. Alexia, however, remains calm, showing no sign of shock at the explosion that just occurred. When Iris finally finds Alexia, she cannot contain her emotions and runs to hug her sister, relieved. The next day, Alexia returns to her normal routine and goes back to school with Sid, who is once again pretending to be just an ordinary student. She vents about her problems, but Sid is clearly not interested. Even so, Alexia thanks him for the compliment he gave about her sword style. She says that after thinking about it a lot, she began to accept and appreciate her way of fighting. After that, Alexia asks Sid to keep pretending to be her boyfriend for a little longer, but Sid refuses immediately, and she smiles in a very strange way before leaving. Meanwhile, the members of the Shadow Garden congratulate their leader, Lord Shadow, for his recent great achievements. They believe that one day all enemies will be defeated, but they also express concern about the unknown people who have been impersonating the organization. Even so, they assure that those imposters will be properly punished at the right moment. At the same time, Princess Iris begins connecting the dots about the cult of Diablos and the Shadow Garden. She believes there is some obscure connection between these two forces. For that reason, she decides to create a new investigation team led by Glenn Marco. Back at the school, a girl carrying a stack of books bumps into Sid when he accidentally blocks her path. The books fall, and Sid tries to help her stand up, but she remains still, almost paralyzed in front of him, as if she had completely frozen. Somewhere else, a man is chased and captured, begging for his life, but he ends up being killed immediately by the sword of the Shadow Hunter, who announces his identity before vanishing into the darkness. Later, Sid is in a restaurant with his friends, preparing a hot broth. They ask about his relationship with Alexia, and Sid answers that they simply broke up, and that is the end of the subject. His friends explode at him, asking if they had at least gotten close once, and Sid replies that they had not. They become furious, saying that the entire romance was a total waste and calling Sid completely hopeless. One of the friends comments about a place that could help them with that, but the other misunderstands and starts a loud argument. The first then clarifies that the place is called Mitsugoshi, very famous for selling unprecedented products, including something called chocolate, which has supposedly been helping several boys win over girls. Sid was ignoring this entire conversation, just drinking his soup, until he hears the word chocolate. He freezes for a moment, looks upward, and his friends notice and immediately declare, "We're all going together." even reluctant. Sid ends up agreeing, driven by curiosity about this so-called chocolate. Meanwhile, Sherry is in an office beside her father, Iris, and Alexia. Sherry is introduced to a mysterious object. She believes it is an artifact, but they explain that the item was confiscated from a facility belonging to an organization called the Cult of Diablos, a group about which almost nothing is known. It was given to her because they want Sherry to research it, since she is considered the brightest in the entire kingdom, superior to any other scholar in the field. Sherry is shocked because she is only a student, but they also explain that the rumors about her brilliance have already spread throughout the city and have even been mentioned in the Night Academy. Her father assures her that this is a great opportunity and says that one day she will travel the world with her research. He asks her to trust herself, and after thinking about his words, Sherry finally accepts the task. The officer present adds that the Crimson Order will be assigned to protect her, and Sherry's father is surprised when he hears that name and asks if it is a newly created Night Order. She explains that they are small and discreet orders formed by extremely trustworthy knights. When Sherry confirms that she will take the job, Alexia volunteers to help her because she wants to discover who these people are and what they want, and they allow it, but demand that Alexia promise to stay away from danger. Alexia thanks them for the concern, and meanwhile, Sid and his friends arrive at Mitsugoshi. The attendant warns that the waiting line is 80 minutes long and worse than any bank queue in Brazil. The boys hesitate, unsure if they should wait or leave so they do not get caught by the curfew. One of them comments that he heard rumors about assassins who attack after nightfall. The other calls him an idiot, claiming that they are 3 knights and nothing will happen. Sid becomes curious about this assassin, but his friends completely ignore him and keep walking. As they walk, a young woman approaches and asks Sid if he would like to participate in a survey. His friends immediately say that they also want to participate, but she informs them that she only needs one person and takes Sid with her. They walk into a massive shopping center and Sid looks around, realizing that he is simply following the girl without knowing where she is taking him. He reminds her about the survey, but she leads him to a secret door. It was all just a pretext to bring him to a meeting with Gamma, one of the Shadow Garden members whose life he saved and whom he does not even remember training in the past. Gamma is sitting on a throne, excited to see him, and she quickly descends the stairs to greet him. But she trips and falls face first on the floor, bleeding. Sid comments internally that she is one of the most intelligent people he knows, but also one of the least skilled physically. While they clean the blood from her face, Gamma asks Sid to sit, and when he sits on her throne, Sid thinks that he truly feels like a king, as if he finally were the real eminence in the shadows. He wonders how Gamma managed to build and manage such a luxurious place, and Sid tries to offer a reward for everything she has done, but she refuses, saying that she is not worthy of his honor and that she will never forget that he saved her life. Sid then asks if business is going well. Gamma explains that she has several investors and that she has around 1 billion Zen ready to use immediately. Sid is shocked, but Gamma, however, thinks it is not much. Sid starts imagining how she managed to create all of that, using only fragments of his teachings, without him supervising anything. He thinks he should feel happy, but what truly impresses him is how much profit she makes. The guy only cares about money and nothing else, a genuine capitalist. After Sid settles in, Gamma informs him that an important incident is about to occur. A mysterious assassin has been appearing in the capital, pretending to be part of the Shadow Garden. They are already investigating, but they still have not captured the culprit, and she assures him that this imposter will be punished. Sid remembers his friend's comments about an assassin wandering the city, and he tells Gamma that he has an idea of who it might be and that he will investigate personally. Gamma immediately begins praising him, saying she expected nothing less from the Sovereign of the Shadows. As he starts to walk away, Gamma introduces Nu to him, saying that she is the newest member and that he may use her however he wishes. He says he will call her if he needs anything, and as he is about to leave, he says that he wants chocolate. While they talked, he was stealing some of her Zen, and she informs him that the chocolates will be given to him for free, and he seems very excited. Soon after, we see Sid and his friends running with chocolates in their hands, almost late for the curfew, and they complain to Sid for returning too late, saying he was flirting with the girl from the survey. And he apologizes and reminds them that he brought chocolate for them. While running, he thinks that Alexia is the assassin and wonders why. He concludes that she probably lost her sanity, since she was not very stable to begin with. As he runs, he hears the sounds of swords, so he stops abruptly. His friends turn around and ask him why he stopped. he invents the biggest excuse possible, saying that he ate too much chocolate and needs to go to the bathroom. Otherwise, he will completely soil himself right there. He tells his friends not to wait for him because he feels extremely sick. Then we see Alexia fighting the Shadow Hunter. While she fights, she notices that he has split into 3, and she starts facing them alone. Until Sid himself appears, and she realizes they are imposters. 2 of them are killed immediately while the other escapes. When Sid tries to leave, Alexia stops him to ask what he wants, what he uses all that power for, and who he is fighting. Sid turns and tells her to stay out of it and vanishes. Sid goes out searching for the one who escaped and finally finds him. He confronts him, asking if he thinks he can run away from him until Gamma appears. Since she did not expect him to capture the man so quickly, she asks to take him away so she can gather more information. Sid tells her not to ruin everything, and she says she will not. She threatens the imposter, saying that she is not as merciful as Lord Shadow. Somewhere else, we see Alexia explaining what happened to Iris. Iris asks if she is alright, and Alexia begins by saying that the assassin is not from the Shadow Garden. Then Iris says that maybe the assassin belongs to a different organization. That easily assumed the name. Alexia answers saying that this is not what Shadow told her. When she encountered him, someone from the Shadow Garden was defending the royal captain from those simultaneous attacks, and that person's name was Alpha. Shadow was fighting against a cult of Diablo. Iris says they may discover something when the artifact is deciphered, and Alexia asks Iris who she thinks the enemy is, the Shadow Garden or the cult of Diablo. Iris answers that it is both, and she says she will not allow anyone to cause destruction in her kingdom. Right after that, we see Sid on the train with his friends, who mock him because of what happened the day before, since he ended up soiling his entire pants, saying he was lucky. Sid answers saying he thinks the teasing that day will be even worse and prepares himself for the worst. His friends ask if he brought the chocolate, and he confirms it, and they get extremely excited, declaring that the day will be Operation Gift Giver, saying they can't wait to give chocolate to the girls. Both friends take their chocolates and try to give them to the girls, but both fail completely. Sid sits in the library, picks up his own chocolate, and says he will give it to the first girl he sees. He begins walking, then sees a girl named Sherry who is studying the artifact she was given to examine. He simply places the chocolate on top of her book and says she can keep it. Then he leaves, and Sherry looks at the chocolate, confused. Sherry is in her room studying, looking at the chocolate and wondering what she should do with it. Her father walks in coughing and sees the chocolate, and she explains it was a gift from a boy. He says that must be love at first sight, and her father asks what she will say in return, but she becomes very confused. He explains better, saying that although the research is important, she also needs to learn how to interact with other people, because to him that is what school is supposed to be. He asks how the deciphering of the artifact is going. She says she has already started, and then he begins coughing louder and more frequently. Sherry says she will call the doctor immediately, but he stops her, saying he feels much better. He only feels lucky to have a daughter like her. She says she is the one who is lucky to have a father like him. And then he tells her that her mother was a good researcher, so she will handle the work. Sid's attention is then drawn to a poster announcing a fencing tournament. As he looks at it, he is followed by Niu, the new member of the Shadow Garden, who happens to be wearing a very nice school uniform. When he sees her, he thinks she is a student. However, she reveals that she was only trying to blend in, wearing a school uniform so she would not attract too much attention. She updates Sid on the details of the suspect dressed in black whom they had captured earlier. It seems he had undergone an extremely powerful brainwashing. Unfortunately, the same thing happened to the other recognized individuals, such as the vanguard of the cult of Diablos, called the Third Children. Niu had difficulties extracting any information from the man, due to the effectiveness of this brainwashing. At this point, Sid shows no interest in what she is saying. He is simply ignoring everything. On the other hand, he is far more concerned with the tournament that his friends had shown him earlier. They try to persuade him to participate in the competition, but he does not seem very interested. As a last resort, they attempt to convince him by explaining that they would participate if it were not for their injuries. Apparently, they took arrows to the knee, and only a few people will get that reference. Sid, however, insists repeatedly that he is not taking it seriously at all, although he is slightly interested in the tournament. Surprisingly, they try using the strategy of making girls like him as a way to convince Sid. but he does not fall for it, since he is Sigma and responds by punching everyone. Sid takes the poster from their hands and examines it carefully, while his friends roll on the floor in pain from the strikes. Then he remembers that Neo mentioned the cult of Diablos, which had started that tournament as a method of recruiting orphans. They administer drugs to wash their brains and turn them into children of Diablo. It seems this was an operational method used by the cult many years ago. In addition, Neo suspects that the cult is only using his name and Shadow Garden in an attempt to lure them out of their hiding places. Even after hearing this, Sid remains determined to compete in the event. And at that moment, he is informed of the arrival in the capital of a first child named Rex. From what it seems, the first child is someone who developed a sense of identity, despite being one of the children. Neo is very worried about the fact that they are sending named children to the capital, and also about the possibility that there is another objective behind it. While Sid thinks about what she said, he concludes that the matter requires extra consideration. Neo, however, watches her master depart with admiration, believing that he will find the best possible solution. She calls his unique ability to solve problems the wisdom of the shadows. A few days later, the competition begins and the students start screaming in excitement just to see the two competitors face each other. Even though Princess Alexia is still injured, the students keep saying that she would do well in the tournament, despite not participating. Even so, they remain confident that Rose, the president of the student council, will be a formidable opponent. Meanwhile, the students place bets on who they think will win the competition, and they seem to be having a lot of fun. On the other hand, this is not the case for Sid's friends, who seem to have used all the money they had by betting on fighters who ended up losing their matches. While they lament, it is announced that the next fight will be between Rose, the president of the student council, and an unknown boy. Her opponent ends up being none other than Sid himself, which they see as a huge surprise. While he stands there in front of her, he spends the time examining her and finally concludes that she is the most skilled swordswoman in the academy. As soon as the fight begins, it seems that Sid is ready to demonstrate advanced techniques. On the other hand, it turns out these techniques are not for fighting. Instead, these are techniques he uses to make himself look even more like a background character. Sid quickly puts a blood pill in his mouth and allows himself to be struck by Rose, while the two advance toward each other with the intent to defeat the opponent. Sid then loses his balance and falls to the ground, blood pouring from his mouth. And this protagonist is absolutely insane. While the students are watching, they are very excited, and the referee is about to declare Rose the winner, until Sid indicates that the fight is not over yet. At that moment, he stands up and makes another attack against Rose, repeating the same humiliating movements several times, even more determined to display his side character techniques. After several blows and defeats, Rose is perplexed to see that he continues fighting. However, she respects his level of determination and insists that she was wrong for underestimating him. At that exact moment, she decides to charge at him with all her strength. For everyone's relief, and out of genuine precaution due to Sid's potentially fatal injuries, the referee intervenes and pushes Sid out of the way, preventing him from having to face her attack. Right after, he announces Rose as the winner of the tournament. And when Sid hears this, he becomes furious, because he still had many background techniques to display. On the other hand, Rose is not surprised by the referee's decision, and is shocked by how much pain Sid endured during their fight. After that, she acknowledges that Sid won the battle of spirit between them, and expresses her respect for him. Sid leaves the fight with bandages wrapped around his head, despite not having suffered any injury. As he walks through the school, he is approached by a young girl, who seems quite worried about his condition. She asks how he is before they go together to a nearby cafe to drink some orange juice. Shortly after, she gives him some freshly baked cookies, and begs him to be her friend. Sid does not understand why she offered cookies or why she wants to be his friend, but even so, he accepts. Immediately, she informs her father, who had been sitting at a table behind her the entire time, and this fills her with emotion. Sid recognizes her father as Lutheran Bernard, a master swordsman, who is on the list of people he must never interact with in order to maintain his secret. The two of them end up being extremely concerned about Sid's injury, and insist that he visit the doctor, which he agrees to do on his way back home. This is only to prevent them from following him and discovering that he is not actually injured. Sherry's father asks Sid to be kind to his daughter, because she has no friends, This ends up being a shocking request for him, as he does not understand why he needs to be in this situation. He ends up using his injury as an excuse to avoid her for a few days. When Sherry returns home, she remains worried about Sid and thinks about the possibility of visiting him. However, she remembers that Princess Alexia and Sid might be dating, when her thoughts are interrupted by the idea that the two of them might be together. To clarify this, she decides to visit Alexia personally so she can ask her. When she arrives at Alexia's house, she is informed that the two are no longer dating and never were, because their relationship was always a farce. When she hears this, she becomes very excited and tells the princess that she just became friends with Sid and wanted to make sure that he and the princess were not together. She then explains how happy she is with the news and leaves right afterward. The princess, on the other hand, does not seem very happy and does everything she can to hide her own jealousy. Meanwhile, the students wait anxiously for the explanation regarding the procedure for voting for the student council the next day. After Rose and another council member finally arrive, the two begin explaining what happened. At that moment, members of the cult of Diablos release a massive shield around the school, causing the students to lose their ability to use magic. This happens first. It seems that Sid is the only one who can recognize this phenomenon. While all of this unfolds, Princess Alexia is on her way to the academy. She is most likely extremely jealous about Sid and Sherry, so she goes there to see for herself. However, to her surprise, the school gates are already closed when she arrives, and she finds this very strange. As she pays attention, she asks her father for help. With the students still trapped in the academy, Princess Iris and the knights are worried about what the next action will be. They cannot do anything due to the magical barrier surrounding the school, and their frustration increases when they realize their specialists are also trapped inside the academy. Meanwhile, inside, the students remain tied up and gathered together. Their current condition leaves President Rose irritated, since she asks why they need to be tied up when they cannot do anything at all with their magic annulled. On the other hand, Sid and Sherry try to find a solution for the magical barrier around the school. Apparently, the barrier is being raised through the use of the Eye of Avarice. After some time, Sherry manages to create a device that can control the Eye of Avarice. Although Sid finds this impressive, he is worried about the hidden tunnels. At that moment, Sherry opens a secret passage behind a display and prepares to descend the dark stairs in the hope of helping her father. When she looks at the dark staircase, Sherry is shaken, as she remembers the night of her mother's death. That night, her mother was stabbed multiple times. With no one else to care for her, the man she calls her father appeared and offered to take her in. Since her mother had been his dear friend, the love and affection he showed her motivated her to look for him amid all the terrible things happening at the school. Ready to descend the stairs, Sid wishes her good luck, and she thanks him before moving on. Back in the place where all the students are being held, President Rose discourages one of them from doing anything, since he is very quiet and wants to confront the men. She becomes even more convinced that facing them is not a good idea after evaluating their leader and noticing how powerful he is. This, however, does not stop them, since they are eager to fight these men. When they think about advancing against them, they hear a noise from above. At that moment, they witness several men shooting at the students, which strengthens their determination to rebel. But Princess Rose continues telling them to remain calm. They, however, believe that everyone will be killed if they do nothing. At that moment, Sherry reaches the hall above the students and can see everything that is happening. As she watches, she sees the leader of the men recharging the Eye of Avarice, which gives her a chance to end the hostage situation. Without wasting time, she throws her magic device at him. A bright light covers the entire area, deactivating the power of the Eye of Avarice. With the magical barrier deactivated, President Rose does not waste time before attacking one of the men. She then informs the students that their magic has been unlocked, encouraging them to fight back. Upon hearing this, the students begin advancing against their captors without mercy, terrifying them completely. However, their leader orders them to kill the students before fleeing. While they fight, President Rose aims at the leader and is determined to reach him no matter what. Unfortunately, her efforts are useless, as the men surround her, giving her no chance to reach the leader. In the heat of battle, President Rose senses a powerful presence, and at that moment, Sid appears in his true form as Shadow. Fortunately for the students, he arrives with an army, and at that moment, he introduces them as Shadow Garden. Ignoring the students, they attack the imposters, taking them down with ease. And since those men are now busy fighting the real Shadow Garden, President Rose orders the students to leave the auditorium immediately. Naturally, the students waste no time and run to safety, leaving the fight to the real combatants. Meanwhile, Sherry continues looking for her father, who is nowhere to be found. On the other hand, the leader of those men, whose name I forgot, releases a chemical that sets the building on fire. With the barrier down, the princess and the knights break into the place. They end up seeing the students outside, already safe, while the building is engulfed in flames. When she asks what happened, President Rose says they were saved by a mysterious organization called Shadow Garden. Hearing that name once again leaves Princess Iris irritated and deeply worried. While all the students are safe, Sherry remains inside the burning building, still searching for her father. However, the leader of the strange men goes to the office in the building in order to remove his disguise. Before doing that, he ends up burning some books, and at that moment, Sid arrives and asks why he is wearing such a costume. As surprising as the question may seem, he reveals that the leader is actually Professor Lutheran Barnett, Sherry's father. With his identity revealed, the professor removes the mask and demands to know how Sid found out. Sid teases him, saying he noticed because of the way he walks. At that moment, Sid demands to know what he is doing with all of this, since he never seemed like someone who displayed signs of malice. It is then that the professor reveals he is doing this because he never had the chance to reach the highest and most glorified level of sword mastery he hoped to achieve, despite being exceptional. This dream of his was stopped by an illness, right when he was very close to reaching it. Furthermore, he tells Sid about his involvement in Sherry's mother's research, which led him to obtain the Eye of Averett. However, at the time, she believed it was dangerous and suggested they hand it over to the government to keep it secure. This ended up making the professor extremely angry, leading him to kill Sherry's mother in the most horrible way possible. When Sherry found her mother, she never knew what had happened and continued her mother's research, unaware that the man she considered her father was actually the one responsible for killing her own mother. Upon hearing this, Sid states that everyone has something they claim to possess in their journey through life. After the two share their strange and brief ideologies about life, they decide to stop talking and fight. Sid then draws his sword to face the professor, and as expected, he uses the most useless form of Grim possible. This gives the professor a feeling of relief, since he had just defeated the only one who seemed to know his true identity. After killing Sid, he turns to leave, and shortly after turning around, he hears a voice asking where he thinks he is going. At that moment, he turns and sees Sid in his true form as Shadow. Even though Shadow's presence frightens him, he tries to act as if he is not afraid, staring directly at Shadow. He ends up acknowledging that he is at a disadvantage. Right after that, he removes the Eye of Avarice and merges it with his own body in a way that triggers his rebirth and makes him more powerful. Surprisingly, his supposedly powerful magic is still no match for Shadow's power, who blocks his attacks with little effort. Soon after, he cuts the professor's shoulder, who becomes enraged and charges toward Shadow. As they fight, the professor talks about his plan to accuse Shadow of everything that happened. Surprisingly, the professor reveals that he prepared evidence, testimonies, and everything necessary to make it completely believable that Shadow would be declared a traitor, making the entire world hunt him. When Shadow hears all of this, he seems not to care about anything the professor said. Instead, he states that he would gladly accept all the hatred, adding that this would not change anything, since Shadow Garden has always operated without caring about the perspective of others besides themselves. These words end up leaving the professor deeply worried, and since his previous plan of blaming Shadow seems useless, he attacks him furiously, hoping to inflict heavy damage. But Shadow, once again, evades every attempt. He then stabs him several times, remembering what the professor did to Sherry's mother, before piercing his heart and destroying the Eye of Greed. The professor's death gives Shadow a soothing justification, one he hopes Sherry will feel. At that moment, Sherry finally finds her father, but in the same condition in which she saw her mother years before. She only screams, telling him to wake up, and Shadow becomes tempted to reveal that he was the one who killed her mother, but decides to drop it, since it would be harder for her if she found out. Later, Shadow Garden sees a statement blaming Shadow for everything that happened, and this makes them even more determined to follow Shadow's resolution. The next day, Sherry meets Sid. She thanks him for everything he did to help her the day before, saying she never would have managed without his help. Then she informs him of her decision to study at Stereo, in Lagos, a city known for science. Before leaving, she tells Sid there is something she must do, and she chose to go to Stereo in search of knowledge to accomplish it. She also says she wishes she had gotten the chance to know Sid better. And as she picks up her bag to leave, Sid asks what this thing she needs to do is, and she answers that it is a secret. Due to the destruction of the school caused by the violent battle between the fake Shadow Garden and the real Shadow Garden, the students are forced to return home, and this ends up becoming an early summer break for them. However, with all the students gone, Sid remains in the dormitory since he has nothing to do at home, even though he starts to realize he also has nothing to do at school. As he spends his day resting, he receives a letter from Alpha, saying he needs to go to the Holy Land, Lindy Warren. Meanwhile, one of Lord Shadow's girls, Beta, looks at herself in the mirror. At first she appears quite discouraged, but suddenly she transforms her body into a supposedly perfect one. At that moment, she reveals how Lord Shadow gave her the power to change her destiny when he first met her. Nothing too surprising. She simply decided at that moment to use her power to alter her current form, since she does not consider it very admirable. Since then, she has become obsessed with him, and this led her to write and create the story about how he considered her his charming young alpha. Even though her stories do not flow as smoothly as she expected. This happens mainly because she thinks they are too dramatic. She also blames herself for using a questionable character as the female protagonist, and frustrated with how poorly her writing is going, she decides to go outside for some fresh air. Outside the building, she meets Y, and the two enter a fierce dispute about who has the bigger airbag. At that moment, Y informs Beta about Lord Shadow's sudden interest and the intense look he supposedly gave her. She states that she recently felt the intense passion of that gaze in her heart, and upon hearing this, Beta becomes offended and assumes it must be a mistake. But Y insists it is true and not an error. She also tries to tease Beta, saying she probably would have received the same look at some moment, since she, Y, had a larger airbag. At this point, Beta finds the conversation extremely uncomfortable and likely searches for a way to leave. Fortunately for her, one of the girls named Neil appears as Alpha's new director. Meanwhile, Princess Iris and Princess Alexia are at a shopping mall, buying clothes for the trip to the most recent Holy Land. Apparently, Princess Alexia is being sent there as a special guest for the goddess trial. Since Princess Iris accompanied her to the mall, she asks her sister to follow the capital's trends. Princess Alexia, however, assures her sister that she will be able to use the time to invest in matters related to the recent events in the kingdom and gather useful information to help them deal with the unresolved issue. She also asks her sister to remain calm, since her innocent appearance would make her free of suspicion. Hearing this, Princess Iris becomes optimistic, since she believes people are less cautious around Alexia than around herself. Although she does not want her sister to get involved in the investigation and would have preferred not to tell her anything. As they talk, they are interrupted by the mall president, who apologizes for not having come to greet them earlier. Upon arriving, she offers some delicious snacks, and seeing how tasty they are, Princess Alexia demands that some of them be taken to her room. Right afterward, she asks the president if there are any other new items she can choose from, since she will be traveling. She asks to see the clothes the president recommends. Hearing this, Princess Iris remembers they have already bought party dresses. However, Princess Alexia dislikes this answer and demands to see something more casual, something she can wear every day. Hearing her speak, the president understands exactly what she needs. She draws the princess's attention to a clothing line she believes they will like. Surprisingly, the princesses are shown several pieces of very appealing women's underwear. Of course they are. Seeing these items, the princesses are shocked, while Iris complains about the lack of fabric in them and about the fact that they are transparent. Alexia declares her confidence in her own backside. Hearing this, Iris remembers that this is not the point. As she says that, Alexia pulls the underwear pieces off the mannequin, ready to try them on. The two continue arguing in the fitting room, and realizing her sister will not stop being difficult, Alexia clearly asks whether those underwear pieces truly deserve such an unshakable rejection. In response, Iris is left speechless, unable to give a definite answer, and this leads Alexia to victory, making her buy the lingerie and several similar items. Meanwhile, later on, When the school building was in flames, students ran around trying to save whoever they could find. Princess Rose, however, remained determined to find Sid. She does this because she had apparently fallen in love with him right after he saved her life. Upon seeing her, Sid, who was lying down covered in bandages, becomes frustrated. This is because he did not want to be disturbed at that moment. Unfortunately for him, his act of heroism ended up securing the heart of the student council president. And that day, President Rose remains at Sid's side. During the trip, he is quite irritated by her insistence. He wishes he had waited until the night, since he could have reached the Holy Land easily. He even blames himself for choosing to take a train like a true side character. And throughout the journey, Sid must deal with her excesses. She wants to know why he is going to the Holy Land, and whether it is because of the goddess trial. In response, he admits that this is indeed the reason, but in truth, he has no idea why Alpha summoned him. He simply assumes it might be because of this goddess trial. As he thinks about it, Princess Alexia thanks him again for saving her life. Then she confidently states that the path ahead of them together will be thorny. Surprisingly, Princess Iris declares that no one would approve their union or give them the blessing needed for them to be together, no matter how little Sid cares. Still, she continues talking about the possibility of them being together. And this time, she encourages him to win the goddess trial, saying his victory would allow her to talk to her father about being with a brave young man like him. While she keeps talking, Sid does not care at all. He is focused on the divine teachings she placed before him. Looking more closely, he recognizes one of the sacred sites as Lindworm, the place he is probably heading to. It was the site where the goddess had once descended to Earth to grant power to 3 heroes. At that moment, she keeps talking about how thorny the path for them to be together will be. She also demands that they keep their relationship secret and tell no one about it. At this point, Sid realizes what she has been trying to do the whole time. Apparently, she was only trying to convert him to her religion. This makes him even more eager to have some space. And that night, she goes to his cabin to see how he is. But he is not there. Seeing this, she becomes disappointed and returns to her own cabin. If she had looked up, she would have seen Sid hiding directly above the door, protecting himself from her constant conversations about them being together. After 2 days avoiding her and keeping his distance, Sid finally arrives in the Holy Land. While walking through the city, she sees her favorite author, Natsumi, at a signing event. For the first time during the trip, she leaves him voluntarily because she wants to meet her favorite author. When she leaves, Sid looks at the books written by Natsumi. Seeing them, he believes these stories were shamelessly plagiarized. The plots make him realize the writer was likely reincarnated as well. And wanting to know who this writer is, he goes to the signing event. Upon standing before the author, he realizes it is none other than Beta. She had apparently written the stories he had told her about his past life stories he shared to help her find inspiration for her writing. However, he becomes very disappointed that she simply wrote them exactly as he said. When Beta returns the signed book, she informs him that the mission details are written there. He, however, does not pay much attention and becomes angry that she did this, saying how disappointed he is. After the event, Rose catches up to Sid again and starts talking, this time about the book. When Sid opens it, he sees a strange writing in the space reserved for the author's autograph. The two find it difficult to decipher and do not know what it means, but Sid thinks it is very cool. On the other hand, we see Alpha, who finds herself in a murder scene. Seeing the bodies of the high officials of the Holy Land, she tries to discover who killed them. While she observes the bodies, a guard enters, and upon seeing her leaving the scene, he assumes she is responsible for the murder. This leads them to order the closing of the cathedral in hopes of capturing the killer. The sound of the bell announcing that there is a fugitive murder suspect is heard by Sid, who laughs loudly when he hears it. While watching from the top of a rooftop, he sees someone moving in the shadows, and shortly afterward he reaches them. And he does not do much, because Y cuts the man down with her powers. Seeing her, he asks about the report of the most recent mission, and when she explains everything to him, he decides to proceed with his plans, demanding that she not speak while executing hers. Sid reaches safety beyond warm and decides to take a bath. On the way, he states his preferences, saying what he likes and what he does not like. Although he thinks there are insignificant things he enjoys and dislikes, one of those things is hot springs. Right after that, he enters a hot spring humming while enjoying the calm warmth it provides. Surprisingly, he does not seem to be the only one who enjoys hot springs, since Princess Alexia was also there and becomes shocked when she sees him enter. Sid completely ignores her, acting as if she were not even there, while still enjoying the water's warmth. Still nervous, Princess Alexia gathers courage to start a conversation and asks about his injuries, since he seems recovered. She is surprised to see him, because she had cut him deeply in their last encounter. And in response, Sid calls her a killing machine, but says nothing more when she asks what he said. Instead, he wants to know why she is in the city, and she explains she was invited for the goddess trial. Then she asks why he is also in the city, and he answers that a friend invited him, since there would be a very fun event happening. Acting ignorant, he asks what exactly people do in the goddess trial, and she finds it surprisingly strange that he came all the way to Lindworm without knowing what it is. To explain, she says it is a combat ritual in which ancient warriors are awakened from the sanctuary to compete against challengers. Hearing this, Sid believes the fighters will be facing ghosts, remembering that Alpha had mentioned something about it. In the middle of his thoughts, Alexia interrupts him, discouraging him from hoping to participate in the combat ritual. Moreover, she belittles him by reminding him that the ancient warriors only respond to the call of challengers they consider worthy. The princess also reveals she will not participate in the ritual. She also makes the shocking revelation about the death of the cathedral's archbishop. Although this does not seem to surprise Sid at all, his attitude, without showing any interest, does not stop the princess from revealing the real reason she came to Lindworm. Apparently, she was sent to audit the dead archbishop, and after saying all that, she decides to stop, because she cannot tell anything else to an outsider. But it is very strange because she has already told him practically everything, right? Even so, she tries to convince him to join the Crimson Knights if he wants to know more, but he instantly refuses. While the two remain alone in the hot spring, Alexia reveals her thoughts about Sid, assuming it seems like he always wants to touch her. Sid, however, quietly tells her to push those ideas away, since he makes a point of not looking at her the entire time they are together in the water, and that, according to him, would make them more comfortable while bathing. At that moment, he asks her to stop staring at his body. In her defense, she tries to make disparaging comments about his body, but becomes shocked when he stands up to prove one should never judge a book by its cover. By showing his Excalibur, he leaves her astonished and completely shocked. And on the next day, Alexia meets the acting archbishop, demanding to conduct the audit, but he cancels it before she even arrives there, leading her to ask why he decided to do that. He states the royal family sent her to audit the archbishop, who is now dead. Moreover, he says that he needs to capture the murderer of the archbishop, and therefore he has no time for the princess's hobbies. After that, he asks her to leave church matters to the church, asking her to simply sit and enjoy the goddess's judgment. This makes Alexia furious and determined to obtain her father's permission to proceed with the audit. Still annoyed with the interim archbishop, Princess Alexia becomes even more irritated with Beta and her disguise as the author Natsumi. She feels that Natsumi's behavior is far too perfect to be real, and becomes even more nauseated by Natsumi's large chest, because she has the feeling that Natsumi uses it to attract her fans. On the other hand, Natsumi recognizes Alexia as the character who tries to approach her beloved Shadow. She, however, believes that her Lord Shadow would never have any interest in the princess, and noticing Natsumi's suspicious stare, the princess steps on her foot. While the interim archbishop begins the goddess's judgment and the people are very excited. One after another, the archbishop calls and presents the day's competitors. First, he introduces a challenger from the kingdom of Oriana named Top Baterio. After that, a member of the audience comments to another that an ancient warrior cannot leave after being summoned, not until either the ancient warrior or the challenger is defeated. According to him, this has already led to a challenger's death in the past, and the other then asks why anyone tries so hard to enter the judgment if it can lead to death. His question is answered by the fact that defeating an ancient warrior grants the victor a commemorative medal. With this medal, the challenger has permission to go to any knight order in the world, and will be hired immediately. Meanwhile, Sid pays attention to the conversation, and, after hearing it, realizes that he would have no chance of acting as an eminence in Shadow if he decided to fight. Even so, that does not stop him from fantasizing about entering the competition as Shadow, and giving the audience the spectacle of a battle while everyone wonders who he is. On the other hand, none of the challengers manage to summon an ancient warrior, which means that all are unworthy, and at that moment, Sid realizes he has not seen Alpha since he arrived in Lindworm. Without his knowledge, Alpha seems to be on a delicate mission on her own. Meanwhile, near the end of the challenge, Sid is called as the final challenger. At first, he does not even notice that they are referring to him and when he finally realizes it, he is shocked, although not as shocked as Natsumi and Alexia. His announcement as a challenger excites the crowd, since they assume he is the best student in his academy. Sid, however, sits in silence, not understanding why he was chosen. But before making a decision, he considers 3 options. The first is not to fight, but then he would be forced to reveal his true identity as an eminence in shadow. The second is to run away, but he dismisses that because he does not want to offend the island of divine teachings and be expelled from the academy. And the third option is to cause confusion. So he decides to choose the last one, and to do that, he simply appears as Lord Shadow announcing his presence. The Archbishop becomes frightened when he sees him, but Shadow moves forward and summons an ancient warrior. Surprisingly, he ends up summoning the fearsome Aurora, the Witch of Calamity, who once rained chaos and destruction upon the world. Upon seeing Aurora, Natsumi recognizes her immediately, while Alexia, on the other hand, is lost, since she had never heard of her, while the Archbishop thinks Lord Shadow is unlucky, wondering how he managed to summon the most powerful witch in all history. However, he believes that Shadow is a low-level bandit, and assumes he is powerless against the supposedly powerful Aurora. Wasting no time, Aurora launches several attacks at Shadow, who spends his time dodging them. Strategically, he runs around her, waiting for the right moment and then studying, until he finally awakens with his sword. The fact that Lord Shadow defeated so easily someone he considered so powerful greatly surprises the interim Archbishop. Soon after, they are shocked as they witness the magical revelation, meaning that the sanctuary responded to Shadow's call. Upon witnessing this, Alpha becomes even more convinced. Later that night, Sid praises himself for having done a good job as a background character, using his power as an eminence in Shadow. It is then that a giant red door appears, with some drawings on it. At first he tries to avoid it, teleporting to another pillar, but it appears again, and trying to avoid the door, he keeps moving from side to side. But the door does not give up on him so easily, until he finally decides to try seeing what is behind that door. Meanwhile, at the sanctuary, the 3 girls are present. During the goddess's judgment in the cathedral, that same giant door ended up appearing, making everyone wonder what that thing was. At first, they question what will come out of the door, perhaps a new warrior or a demon. But behind it emerges the Archbishop, who is surprised by what he sees, saying that the sanctuary probably responded to Shadow. Surprised by what he said, Rosie asks what he meant by responded, and he explains that it is the day of the year when the sanctuary's door is open. However, the appearance of a weak door in the middle of the judgment had never happened before, which surprises everyone. It is known that the sanctuary's door remains hidden in the cathedral, but it is not an ordinary door. It is said that this door has the ability to change its shape and location at will, to respond to those who seek it and those who are worthy of passing through it. This sanctuary door also has other forms, and each of them has different shapes and directions, but right now they cannot tell which of the doors appeared before them. Suddenly, the door begins to open and everyone in the judgment is instructed to leave. That is because no one should approach the door, which leads to the judgment being cancelled. When the Archbishop and the princesses were about to leave the place, Alpha and the Shadow Garden appear in the cathedral, knocking out the guards and threatening the princesses and the bishop to stay silent until the door closes. Right after that, Alpha and some of the cult members disappear through the door. Then, Beta tries to take the Archbishop with her, but when the girls are about to defend him, Natsumi is captured and a sword is placed at her neck, as a way to prevent the others from acting. Alexia says she is not exactly a very gentle person, but tells Rose that maybe they should simply let Natsumi die. But Rose refuses, and Natsumi tells them to leave her there and take care of themselves. It is then that Beta demands that the Archbishop and Natsumi be taken together. The Archbishop refuses, saying that this would only happen in the afterlife, and suddenly, a flash of a sword appears, attacking Beta, but she manages to dodge, although not completely, since part of her 2 melons are floating in the air. But since those airbags are made of venom slime, which is Shadow's power, they recompose easily. Then, in the blink of an eye, a sequence of strikes occurs and, in the end, the victim is Executor Venom, who had come to help the Archbishop, and Beta is the one who kills this so-called Venom. The Archbishop is shocked by what just happened and, at the same time, Beta is furious, with beams of light coming from her eyes. She angrily asks if the Archbishop saw anything and, in response, he denies having seen anything. Even so, she grabs him and flies into the door along with him, followed by the other cult members, who end up taking Natsumi with them. The princesses are very confused by this, because they wonder what the Archbishop might have seen. They themselves could not understand what happened, knowing that only the Archbishop managed to see it, and Natsumi also cannot be left behind. Alexia quickly enters through the door after them, even when an unknown voice tells her not to do that. Because of that, Princess Rose, worried about her sister, also enters the door before it closes completely. Upon entering, they find themselves in a sanctuary where, according to legend, the left arm of the demon Diablos was sealed. Alpha and her cult members, Natsumi, and the Archbishop are also there. After that, Alpha explains that the left arm of the demon Diablos was sealed there, which was sealed in that place after he had been defeated by the hero Oliver. The Archbishop seems quite bothered by this and asks Alpha if she is there to tell a fairy tale, or to show the demon's arm. Alpha tells them that they are there to learn about the cult of Diablos, and the Archbishop is surprised, and she says she knows that he cannot answer any questions, and that is why they came personally. Alpha and her cult came there precisely to learn that story of the demon Diablos. And there they see the true statue of the hero Oliver, and, to their surprise, the hero Oliver is, in fact, a woman different from the male statue that exists in the city. Alpha says that they know the true story behind the cult of Diablos and its objective. To everyone's surprise, she looks exactly like the hero Oliver. Upon seeing this, the Archbishop screams, saying that she is a possessed elf and that she should be dead. Alpha appears behind him, asking if he knows anything about them, and he cannot answer, only trembling in fear. Alpha says that they also know the stories of the possessed and that this must be a nuisance to the church, since it is so anxious to keep things as they are. Rose is confused, unable to understand what she meant. To help, Alpha explains that they discovered the objective of the cult of Diablos, which is to bring the left arm back to life. However, they still do not know the cult's true final goal, so she proposes that everyone enter to discover it for themselves, opening the door to the cemetery of memories. Alpha places her hand on the door, and her hand triggers her powers, revealing patterns as the door gradually unlocked. Suddenly, a large mechanism releases itself, opening the path for a vortex to form. And with water bursting out and a very bright light coming from outside, the Archbishop is shocked. He asks how it was possible for her to open the door. And Alpha, helping his understanding, speaks of the magical power of the demons and of the warriors who fought a great battle behind the gate, who joined together to open that door. The vortex, according to her, holds memories that have nowhere else to go. And Alpha explains that that place is a graveyard of ancient memories and grudges. In the light stands the hero Oliver, as they begin their journey inside the memories. Meanwhile, on the other side, Sid, after entering through the giant door, arrives in a room where he finds Gamma tied to a chair. He asks if she was the one who summoned him there, but she answers no. She then mentions the battle they had some time ago, saying she enjoyed fighting him, and he did too. Although she says her memories are incomplete, she knows that he was the strongest during the fight. She asks how he entered the memories, and that leads him to explain his encounter with the giant door before ending up there. He also asks how she arrived in that place, and she tells him she has no memory of leaving after they fought. She only remembers waking up there. Seeing that there is nothing to do there, Sid tries to leave without freeing her from the restraints, but she stops him, asking at least to be released. Since she is tied with a straitjacket, he cuts it open with his sword. In the process of cutting her free, he also tears the entire straitjacket, leaving her without clothes. She comments that she had been restrained for more than 1,000 years, although she is not sure if it was that long, but she knows it has been a very long time. Then, in the blink of an eye, her straitjacket transforms into clothing and high heels, leaving her quite elegant. Finally free, she tells Sid they should work together since he wants to get out and she wants to escape that place as well. Although she says she knows how to escape, even though she has never left the room before. She tells him that the sanctuary they are in is a prison of memories created from ancient battles, and that only by going to the center and destroying the magic core will she be able to leave. What she means is that when the magic core is destroyed, everything will disappear, which will also help Sid leave. Because of that, the sanctuary will cease to exist, and she does not seem very concerned. She informs him that they cannot use their magical power there, which indicates they are very close to the center of the sanctuary. Even if they try to use their powers, things will not work well. But then Sid says he is good at breaking things, in case they cannot use magic. Since Sid is so reliable, she says she always wanted to have an elegant knight to protect her, since she is only a beautiful and delicate lady in danger. Sid asks what she will do after being freed. As they walk out of the room, she replies that she will simply vanish into nothing when he closes the door. On the other hand, Alpha and the others are also on their journey through the sanctuary, where they can see the memory of the hero Oliver, who had been confined there. In the memories, they discover that long ago the cult gathered children in a huge place that looked like a rehabilitation center or a hospital. There, they were used for experiments, although some children died, a few survived, and those are known as the possessed. Meanwhile, the heroine Oliver is one of the children who were compatible with the cells of the demon Diablos, which were given to them to ingest. Apparently, the Archbishop was one of the cult members who committed those terrible acts. However, he shows remorse, saying that everything was done so that they could defeat the demon Diablos, although that is only a cult excuse. The fact that Oliver truly severed the demon's arm means it is not just a fairy tale. Meanwhile, the place where they are has changed over time because of the battles that took place there, where memories fade and are replaced by new ones. Oliver ended up receiving the mission to extract new cells of Diablos as soon as she was mature enough. The Archbishop says that is not true, but Alpha continues her explanation. Oliver would have been obedient even after gaining her powers. She believed that if she completed that mission, people could live in peace. But she was wrong. She only ended up creating a battlefield full of dead bodies. And even though the demon looked dead, in reality he was still alive. This demon killed many people, which made the cult use ancient artifacts to immobilize his left arm. They researched him by cutting his flesh and collecting his blood, and that was how they obtained the small red spheres they ingested. However, the side effect of these seeds is extremely strong, which the cult considers a serious problem. Suddenly, he finds himself standing before the demon's hidden arm, inside a massive glass tube filled with fluid, completely chained up. The Archbishop becomes distressed when seeing this, and he shouts at them for revealing the memory that he had ingested the seeds derived from Diablo's blood, which supposedly grant great powers and great forms of immortality. This is exactly what the cult truly desired, and Alpha reveals the princesses that the priest Nelson had been involved with this whole time, which makes her vent about everything she endured in the cult. The seed must be ingested once every year, or its effect fades, and that is why they can only produce a small amount, 12 per year, the same number as the members of the Knight of the Knights cult, which are those round knights. Alpha says the seeds still have not been perfected, and that they believe the only way is to immobilize the demon's limb. Then it is revealed that Alpha is actually Oliver's descendant, and she asks the Archbishop to prove otherwise. The priest says the cult needs eternal life and power, and he admits to being one of the Knights of the Round. At that moment, he breaks free from his restraints and Delta stabs him from behind. This ends up being the Archbishop's demise, since she throws him into the water beneath them. Delta apologizes for killing him, because she had been instructed not to do so until obtaining the required information. But to everyone's surprise, the Archbishop did not die. He emerges from the water like a giant and disturbs the memories, which separates the women in the process. They all find themselves in a completely white hall, which Alpha assumes is another feature of the sanctuary's security system. Meanwhile, the Archbishop and the Knights of the Round are also there, preparing for battle with them, and they cannot see why anywhere, and soon they understand that they were separated, which is another characteristic of the sanctuary's security system. The Archbishop declares that the sanctuary is his territory, and that they will feel all of his wrath. Then Delta moves forward to face his copies, and she quickly defeats his copies. However, she notices something very strange. Since her magic was not working very well, the chubby man reveals that he lured them to that place on purpose, since the closer they got to the center of the sanctuary, the more their strength would fade away. And Alpha also adds that as their power decreases, that shameless fat man's power will increase even more. The chubby man's plan was to make them advance even further before starting the attack, but he concludes that the distance they already traveled is enough. Immediately, his copies regain life and go back to fighting Delta. Meanwhile, Sid and Aurora find themselves in a kind of dark hall, where there is no sense of up or down. Sid comments on this very strange place, and Aurora tells him not to look up. As they keep walking, a sudden burst of light appears behind him, transporting them to another memory. Sid and Aurora appear in a new place, with Aurora sitting on top of him. Sid complains that she is heavy, but she immediately moves away, saying that he is only imagining things. As punishment for joking, When Sid looks around, he realizes that probably a great battle took place there. In the land of Baron, the battlefield is filled with bodies and weapons scattered everywhere. Sid thinks to himself that that battlefield is devoid of any sign of home or of life. What they do not notice, however, is that an eminence watches everything from the shadows, and Sid remains in the inverted position in which they arrived, until Aurora extends her hand to help him stand up. The two move on, walking toward an abandoned fortress, stepping on lifeless bodies along the way. Inside the pit, Aurora finds the younger version of herself, and Sid notices that she is in tears. Aurora comments that she has always been a crybaby and asks Sid for the sword. He hands it to her and she tries to eliminate her younger version. However, as she approaches the young Aurora inside the pit, the lifeless bodies around them instantly awaken and begin attacking her. Sid reacts quickly, reaching Aurora and holding her in his arms to protect her from the attacks. Then he uses the reanimated bodies as support to jump and escape to the other side of the pit. Aurora comments that the situation is very frustrating, because the sanctuary seems to be rejecting them both. Sid asks whether they would be seen as a virus, being identified by antivirus software. Aurora answers that the analogy does not make much sense, since she does not understand that very well. Meanwhile, the reawakened bodies start getting closer to them inside the pit. Sid asks what would happen if Aurora died in that place. She thinks for a little while and believes she would be sent back to the first room. The two agree that if that really happens, it will be extremely tiring, having to start everything all over again. In another point of the sanctuary, we see Y's group advancing through the place, and they find a person who apparently looks sick. The group stops immediately, takes a combat stance. But Y makes a gesture for them to lower their guard and moves forward alone to check. As she approaches, the sick person simply disappears while passing through her, leaving everyone shocked. Y explains that that is probably something similar to the goddess's test, a kind of memory that reacted to their presence and materialized. One of the girls asks what she meant by reacting to them, and Y explains that these memories respond to those who are possessed. While exploring the place, they find a file with information and a narrow room full of books. Together, they begin to examine these books and start seeing flashes of memories. Y then explains that the other information they discovered is revealed exactly through these flashes. They would have had an extremely difficult fate if they had not met the formidable Lord Shadow. Y reminds her companions that everything they saw there is only memories, and that it would be impossible to physically take them back. However, a Polaroid camera had been created, and with it, they managed to take several photos of all the information that it was possible to record. Y reinforces that all of that was only possible thanks to Lord Shadow's wisdom, and then they all return to work again. Shortly after, Y's group begins to experience a very strange occurrence. Y explains that this will not make things easier, since her magic runs out the closer she gets to the center of the sanctuary. One of the members comments that that feeling is the same that had been experienced at the academy. Y insists that all of them start managing their magic better. Meanwhile, Sid and Aurora keep defeating the awakened bodies. Sid comments that Aurora is not exactly the best fighter when she is without magic, and she replies saying she is just a damsel in distress. Then she notes that Sid is doing very well without using magic, and he answers that he is finding everything very easy, since he has trained and practiced bodybuilding since childhood. The boy is impressive. Sid comments that he does not hate the god mode they are currently in, but admits that with magic they could keep fighting forever. And to end that memory, Sid quickly kills the young Aurora, apologizing, which makes them both return to a vast room illuminated by an intense and bright light. Observing the environment, Sid comments that the place is enormous and notices that right ahead, there is an area of impressive beauty. Aurora then tells him that this is the center of the sanctuary, and meanwhile Delta keeps fighting the chubby man, even not being a match for her. The chubby man is surprised to see her still resisting, since her magic should be severely limited. With a psychopathic look, Delta keeps defeating even more copies of the chubby man, who remains among the bodies in silence, evaluating his own performance. The Archbishop asks whether she awakened completely on her own, since that technique of hers has been lost for ages. Alpha just gives that little side smile, and cautiously he states that he was prepared for that level of resistance from her, and finally decides to show all his power. Too bad it will not work very well. He ends up creating several copies of himself to fight, but Delta surprises him with her ferocity. She then awakens her Super Saiyan mode, and surrounded by waves of energy and with a devastating shout, she charges for another attack, summoning a giant metal plate ready to destroy all the clones. Returning to our dear Sid, he asks Aurora what exactly they need to destroy in that room. She answers that it is a magic core located on the other side of the door, which is locked by several chains and a blade in the middle. Sid even tries to break the chains with his sword, but realizes it is impossible, since the blade would probably break before the chains gave way. Aurora then asks whether he considered the possibility that there might be a key to open the door. As they approach, Sid sees that shining sword there in the middle of the room. Aurora explains that there is an inscription on it, and that sword is capable of cutting the chain. Sid approaches and notices a fiery red glow emanating from the sword. He tells Aurora that he would not be able to use it, since the sword rejects him when he tries to pull it. Sid and the sword begin shaking violently, and he concludes that sword can only be wielded by the Chosen One. Aurora kneels to read what is written on the sword and realizes that it says it can only be drawn by direct descendant. She points to the sacred inscription engraved on the blade and is impressed to realize that Sid only needed to look at it to understand the meaning. Sid gives up trying to force the sword and comments that he already knew all of that. Aurora asks if that means he knows and has memorized all the patterns of magical writing, and he confirms that yes. Sid then asks what they should do next, but there is no instruction or anything like that to guide them. With nothing else to do, they sit there together beside the sword and wait for destiny to act. Meanwhile, on the other side, Delta keeps fighting the chubby man, and Alexia observes the battle from a distance and starts questioning whether Delta really works for Shadow, since her fighting style does not compare to his. Alexia remembers that when she met Shadow, his style was extremely sophisticated, unlike Delta's, which lacks technique or refinement. She relies completely on unrestrained violence. Delta defeats more copies of the shameless chubby man and ends up breaking the entire place and leaving it. He is surprised to realize that she fought against more than 100 clones without showing any sign of fatigue. Irritated, the chubby man now loses his patience, and Delta assumes that he was a scientist in the past and states that even if he creates countless copies, they all share a single brain, which is not enough to control so many bodies at the same time. So even if they are 1,000, they will look like scarecrows, since they will not be able to move freely. The chubby man retreats, fearful before Delta, and ends up hitting a statue of the heroine Olivier. He stares at the statue and starts striking it, calling her to come down to help him. In a shine of red light, the heroine Olivier appears to answer the chubby man's request, and he begins laughing, believing he has secured his victory. From above, Y calls out to Alpha as soon as she recognizes Olivier and informs her that the investigation is finished and that they can already leave. Alpha then announces that they can withdraw, and the chubby man is surprised by the decision to run, and Alpha clarifies that they are not fleeing. They had no interest at all in people like him, nor in uncertain memories. The group's only objective was to cut off the source of power at the moment of withdrawal. Alpha informs him that now they know how the sanctuary's defense works, and that next time they will come whenever they want. The chubby man threatens, stating that he will not allow them to leave so easily, but Alpha simply ignores his words. Instead, she invites Delta, Alexia, and the other ladies to join them in leaving the place. After Alpha and the others depart, the chubby man begins reflecting on what his next fate will be. He consoles himself by remembering that he was able to behold Alpha's face. For them, if they obtain her blood, they will be much closer to perfecting the plan. The bishop reasons that he will inform the other factions that he lured them to the sanctuary as part of a trap in order to expose their true identities. While he loses himself in thoughts about possible rewards for his actions, the chubby man receives a notification informing him that there are people in the center of the sanctuary. Deciding to have some fun with those who made it that far, he orders Olivier to accompany him. Already in the center of the sanctuary, Sid asks Aurora about her intention to disappear, since she had mentioned that, after the destruction of the core, she would cease to exist. Aurora explains that, more than disappearing, it would be more correct to say that she would be freed from the prison of memories that repeat eternally, something that has become very hard for her to endure. Sid encourages her to give it a little more time, saying that things will eventually resolve themselves. In his thoughts, he concludes that, according to the formula, it was already the moment for the protagonist of the story to make his grand entrance. At that instant, out of nowhere, the chubby man appears before them, and Sid stands up excited, believing that he is the direct descendant of the heroes, the one who will be able to draw the sacred sword. However, when he realizes it is a bald chubby man, he is surprised, since it is not who he imagined. Sid then wonders whether that is not one of those classic moments in which the villain appears to stop the protagonist's advance. Sid looks at Olivier and notices that she resembles Alpha quite a lot, but he quickly realizes that she is not Alpha. The chubby man recognizes Aurora and asks Sid how he managed to free her from her prison, referring to her as a witch. Sid is surprised that the chubby man knows Aurora and asks her if she knows him, but Aurora does not remember him, which leads the chubby man to mock her. The bishop declares that he will not allow someone like Sid to have access to the door and sends Olivier to face him. Sid immediately realizes that Olivier is extremely strong and that she does not possess a heart. Then the fight begins, and Aurora begs them to stop. She tells the chubby man that she will do anything if it means sparing Sid's life, but I do not know why she did that. Sid was doing very well in the battle. Sid has a card up his sleeve. If you notice, he is keeping one eye closed the whole time, and you will soon know why. He is super confident and provokes Olivier, who stabs him mercilessly. Then he opens his right eye, which had been closed until then. He grabs Olivier, pulling her closer, then bites her neck hard, tearing her and defeating her. The boy suddenly became a vampire. Before the eyes of the shameless chubby man, the heroine Olivier dissolved. Sid lets out that satisfying laugh, which leaves Aurora completely shocked. The chubby man asks how Sid managed to survive, since he saw him being stabbed in the stomach. Sid explains that as long as the vital signs are protected, the human body is surprisingly resistant and very beautiful. He goes on saying that even when someone is struck in the abdomen, the secret is to protect the arteries and the most important organs, making the person survive. Finally, Sid throws his sword on the ground, since it was all broken from the fight. Sid tells the chubby man that it is very beautiful to avoid the trouble of dodging an enemy attack, simply by protecting the vital organs. The chubby man begins to sweat in the face of everything he is saying and can barely form coherent words. Sid then continues his explanation in a carefree way, saying that at the moment the attacker stabs him in the abdomen, he gains the perfect opportunity to bite the person's neck. The chubby man comments that he is not sure if Sid is right in the head, and Sid completely ignores the provocation and keeps talking. He states that since the heroine Olivier was defeated, the fight must now continue with the chubby man. He begins to beg them not to fight, suggesting that they talk calmly about everything. Sid ignores his pleas and keeps advancing. As Sid approaches the center of the arena, the chubby man comments sarcastically that he must be expecting him to beg out of fear, but he states that he will not do that, at least not yet. He admits he is quite surprised that someone incapable of using magic defeated them, but he attributes this to Sid's luck, saying that all he did was defeat a single copy. Even so, the chubby man congratulates him ironically. When Sid answers with a mocking thank you, the chubby man becomes outraged, stating that he has achieved absolutely nothing. According to him, there is so much dormant magical energy accumulated in the sanctuary that it is impossible to even imagine its true potential, which means he can still do much more. He then channels his powers and creates countless copies of Oliver to attack Sid. Every inch of the sanctuary walls starts to be covered by these copies, all programmed to attack him. Sid calmly observes everything around him, analyzing the numerous superhuman bodies created to face him. He declares that the game has come to an end and opens his eye again, emanating an intense blue light. The creations of the chubby man begin to witness misfortune before their eyes under Sid's power, leaving the chubby man completely astonished. He watches in disbelief the solid mass of magical energy being controlled by Sid, questioning how this is possible, since he should not be able to use magic. But Sid is the Batman of anime, and he was already prepared. As soon as he realized he could not use magic, since it would be absorbed, he condensed all the magic so that it became too solid to be absorbed. And that is why he had his eyes closed all this time. He was carrying out his maneuver. The blue light ends up disappearing from his eyes, and he comments that it took some time to master this technique, but that in the end, it is something quite simple. Aurora watches everything in surprise, since she considers that feat impossible for any human being. Then the chubby man orders Oliver and her countless copies to attack Sid. But now it is over. Sid is extremely strong and states that the movements are more tedious than before, and that now the copies move like mere scarecrows. He faces the copies for a few moments, while Nelson keeps ordering them to kill him. Sid feels the cut on his abdomen, and he says that the game is over. And he asks Aurora once again what the mission steps are. Draw the sword, cut the chains, and destroy the magic core. Aurora confirms, and she tries to stop him from acting. But Sid states that it is far too much work to fulfill each step separately. Instead, he will do everything at once, reaching the same result. The coloration of the entire environment changes to a purple tone, and Aurora looks up, trying to understand what Sid is doing. While she watches, she wonders how a single person possesses so much power. And here we already start to rise from our seats, because Sid is going to use his supreme spell. Before he can finish his last words, one of Oliver's copies stabs him directly in the heart. Sid begins to bleed, but he shows no reaction to the wound. Instead, he simply completes his spell, saying atomic, and a colossal magical explosion is released, shaking the entire sanctuary, destroying all of Oliver's copies and everything that was around. Shadow Garden is watching from outside, simply admiring the overwhelming power of their leader. Soon after, Sid appears in a dark place, wielding his sword, and before him, a bright red chain rises. He raises the sword to strike, but in the next instant he is transported to another vision. In this new scene, Sid awakens lying at Aurora's feet, in the middle of a forest. She asks how he managed to survive being stabbed in the heart, and Sid sits down to talk with her and reveals that he used magic to move his own heart from its place. He admits that he is now exhausted, and Aurora comments that he is full of surprises. When Aurora begins to touch his wound, Sid notices that she is disappearing. Aurora becomes more withdrawn and settles down to talk with him. She reveals that she was the one who called him there and apologizes for having lied. Sid answers that it is all right, and Aurora then continues, saying that this was not the only thing about which she lied. She confesses that for a long time all she wished was to disappear into nothingness and forget everything. Aurora then looks Sid in the eyes and says that now she has managed to create a memory she does not wish to forget. Even if she comes to disappear, she wants to preserve that memory, without letting it fade away. Then she thanks him for that precious memory, and Sid also thanks her, saying that he had a lot of fun. Aurora begins to explain to Sid what he should do if one day he finds her true identity, but she disappears before managing to conclude her words, leaving Sid alone. And for me, in that moment, she gives him a kiss, and no one is going to say otherwise. Soon after, he comments that he does not appreciate the direction that is being taken. And after some time, Sid stands up and begins to walk around the place. Meanwhile, Alexia and the other girls move forward after everything they witnessed. They speculate that what they saw were probably shadows, but they end up stopping abruptly. Alexia feels frustrated for not having been able to do anything and reflects that she had already accepted the fact of being powerless. Even so, now she feels that there is something beyond that. She realizes that she cannot distinguish who is right or wrong, nor even judge clearly what is good and what is evil. Alexia laments having been only a spectator unable to act, and she fears that if everything continues that way, she may lose all her loved ones before even understanding that they are in danger. Rose answers that she has been reflecting on this since the attack on the academy. She believes that there are large organizations acting in the shadows, but that they know nothing about Shadow Garden or the other major organizations. Natsumi, who is Beta in disguise, intervenes in the conversation and asks Alexia what they should do. Alexia says that they are weak and ignorant, but believes that if everyone collaborates, they will be able to achieve something. Because they are princesses, Alexia and Rose feel that they can use this position in their favor. Natsumi, on the other hand, can contribute by using her influence as an author. The three agree to join forces to gather information and respond. With this data, they can recruit allies to work with them, and possibly establish a base of operations. After some hesitation and sharing their fears about a plan that is still not very solid, they decide to form a team. Each one promises to contribute with everything they can to reveal the truth to the world. On a boat ride, Y informs Alpha that the sanctuary was completely destroyed, and the sacred sword and the core were vaporized, without any samples remaining. Alpha replies that this was the simplest and most reliable solution to the problem, and the two agree that no one other than Lord Shadow would be capable of accomplishing something like that, since the style of what happened clearly resembles his. Y also comments that Aurora was also known by another name, called Diablos. Then the time comes for the Bushin Festival, an event in which all the strongest people gather to demonstrate their strength in a great combat competition. During the festival, the Black Knight of the Kingdom of Oriana, warriors of the Kingdom of Velgalt, and even fighters from the East attend to honor the event. As the festival is unified in the search for the strongest among all, Sid decides to participate in the competition. He makes this decision because he feels that sponsors, fighters, and spectators share a single desire: absolute strength. Being extremely strong and powerful, Sid wants to demonstrate this strength. In this way, people will be amazed at what he is capable of doing, something that is also part of his wish list as an eminence in shadows, but of course not as his true identity. In the palace of Oriana, Gamma enters the Great Hall only to find Sid standing near a window. As she walks toward him to thank him for honoring the establishment of the palace and also to ask what he came to do there, Gamma suddenly trips and falls face first to the floor. A maid quickly approaches to take care of the bleeding and her nose, while Gamma continues talking with Sid. Directly, Sid is now sitting on a raised throne, revealing his intention to disguise himself and participate in the Bushin event. Gamma shows surprise and asks why he wants to disguise himself, but Sid chooses not to reveal the reason. The preparations for his disguise immediately begin, with rows of clothes being brought for him to choose from. Gamma approaches and begins to spread a slime on his face, explaining that when charged with magical energy, it takes on a texture as real as human skin. For the slime to transform him into the desired person, Sid needs to choose a mental image. He ends up choosing the appearance of an ordinary man. He was a gloomy knight, lazy and without any notable skill, which makes the choice perfect for Sid, since he wants to disguise himself as someone weak. Then a machine is activated to completely cover his head, and after just a few seconds he transforms into a common man. Although he seems very weak at first glance, Sid still decides to also change his posture to reinforce that impression even more. He goes down the stairs to get some clothes that match his new appearance. Meanwhile, Gamma also goes down to tell him that he will need clothes and a sword, but she ends up tripping once again and falls down the stairs, with her nose bleeding. In the streets, while three men are talking, one of them spots a woman wearing metallic armor walking in their direction. Surprised, he recognizes her as Anarose, one of the 7 blades of Velgalt. People say that she is responsible for summoning an ancient warrior during the last judgment of the goddess, which happened some time ago, and many talk about this. At that moment, Sid, now known by another name that I forgot, passes by them in a very unexpected way. Anarose stops him, asking if he is really going to participate in the Bushin festival. She states that this will be a mistake and asks him to give up the idea and go back home, since he looks very weak and sick. Sid, however, answers that she should not judge a book by its cover, and says that he does not need her help, moving away right after. Feeling satisfied with his disguise, he ends up being interrupted by a man called Kent. This guy is very muscular and already boasts about having participated in the festival several times, and he advises Sid to listen when someone more experienced speaks. He tells Sid to go back home, saying that weak people like him always show up to ruin the fun of the festival, drawing some laughter from the people around. In response, Sid comments that, at the very least, he is stronger than Kent. These words end up hurting the muscular man, who delivers a violent punch to Sid's face. This blow hits him hard, dragging him into the alley. Kent moves toward him, thinking about how amateur he is and that he could defeat him easily. Even so, he decides not to fight back, since he does not want to waste energy before the festival. This allows Kent to continue attacking him. While the others lament how pathetic he seems, the muscular man asks why he does not fight back, and Sid answers that he does not intend to waste his fists on a low-level street fighter. Enraged, the muscular man steps on his head, and at that moment Anarose intervenes and demands that he stop. She threatens to face him if he does not, and Kent moves away with his tail between his legs, leaving Sid there on the ground completely beaten. Anarose approaches Sid, who seems almost lifeless, and apologizes for what happened, saying that she did not expect the situation to get out of control. Sid, not understanding the reason for the apology, comments that she could have stopped the aggression at any moment she wanted, but did not. Anarose explains that she believed it was better for him to be defeated there than to suffer a permanent injury in the competition. Therefore, she advises him to go back home, stating that it became clear that he would not be able to advance in the festival. To her surprise, Sid stands up from the ground without showing any injury, making Anarose wonder if he is really not hurt. Without answering, Sid walks away, commenting that it had been a long time since he tasted blood. Before leaving, Anarose calls him to introduce himself, but Sid only repeats the same thing as before, since the guy loves a catchphrase. Soon after, at the tournament venue, while waiting in line to be called to the arena, Sid feels very satisfied for having gained Anarose's sympathy. When he thinks about entering the ring, he imagines that everyone will believe that he does not know how to fight. Then, at the right moment, he will reveal his strength, leaving everyone speechless. This involuntary smile in front of his own thoughts makes the people around him move away, until finally his name is called to enter the arena. On the day before the Bushin festival, Sid and his friend were talking in a restaurant about how the tournament should unfold. They comment that the competition will start with the preliminaries, and only the strongest fighter from that phase will advance to the main event. For Sid, this will be his only opportunity to show his power as an eminence in shadows and achieve his goal. He thinks to himself that he just needs to fight in his usual way. Now his main concern is how to approach the preliminaries, something with which his friend agrees, mentioning that the bets made by people on the fighters only really become effective from the main tournament onward. Even so, if they want to win, they need to collect data from the previous fights to be able to understand how the main event will be. During the conversation, Sid mentions that muscular man from before, called Quenchen. He says that he is a recurring competitor who is observing. Although he wishes to fight against him, he recognizes that it will not be easy, but even so he would like to face him. He comments to his friend that this objective requires careful observation, and his friend agrees, since his friend thinks Sid is talking about bets. He even reinforces that getting it right from the beginning is essential to achieve success. Sid then casually asks who his friend believes will win the tournament. He answers that it will probably be Princess Iris, known for her powerful ability. If she wins the tournament that year, she will become the first repeated champion in ages. He also mentions another strong contender, the student council president, Princess Rose. She has already been the winner of the school tournament, and, by chance, the first Bushin champion of the Kingdom of Oriana. To conclude his analysis, he comments that, if they really want to profit from the tournament, they will need enough financial resources to place larger bets and obtain more significant gains. Instead of answering directly, Sid asks if there is anyone else worthy of attention. And finally, his friend mentions 2 more great fighters he knows. When he begins to prepare to ask for more money for the bets, Sid interrupts him. He gives him as a gift an item he obtained in Liddy Warm before saying goodbye. Even so, he asks for some sandwiches before leaving. Later that night, while walking back home, Sid thinks about how to face one of the fighters mentioned by his friend, since he believed that this would be a good way to attract attention. Suddenly, Princess Rose appears behind him, leading him to wonder what she is doing there so late. She answers that she is going to meet someone, and upon noticing the group with him, Rose comments that she, Princess Alexia, and Lady Natsumi had gone to the restaurant some time earlier to eat, which Sid finds very strange. Princess Rose explains that she is not very close to Natsumi or Alexia, but that she is a good person and extremely kind. She then expresses the wish that everyone will become good friends soon and work together to make the world better. Sid, however, does not seem to appreciate that idea very much, questioning himself internally whether it is really something Rose can do to become friends with Alexia. Considering only her kindness, Rose adds that Princess Alexia and Natsumi still feel a little awkward with each other, and Sid notices that the two are practically a reflection of one another. Soon after, he notices that it is getting very late, and he asks if Rose should not go, since she mentioned she would meet someone. Sid already wants to get rid of the girl. Poor thing. She reveals that she is actually going to meet her father, who wants to introduce her to the kingdom's finances led by Lord Perv. Sid congratulates her, but she does not seem very happy about it, since she will probably have to marry the man. Rose begins to open her heart, saying that since there have always been great expectations about her, because she is a princess, she feels very pressured by this and that she has probably disappointed many people. Because of that, she decided to follow the path of the sword. And Sid comments that he heard that the Dark Knight does not occupy a very high position in the hierarchy of Oriana. She explains that her father and the entire kingdom opposed the choice she made, since they could not see any sense in a princess choosing the path of the sword, something that did not fit very well with her origin. Even so, Rose reveals that she made this decision after meeting a knight during a war she witnessed. In reality, he was not even really a knight. It was just Sid beating up some bandits in his childhood. With sadness in her eyes, she talks about the possibility of betraying countless people with her decisions. To know if anyone believes in her, she asks Sid to believe in her, no matter what happens. To comfort her, Sid gives a positive answer, which makes her very happy. Rose then walks away to leave. But before that, Sid turns and throws the sandwich to her, telling her to relax a little, while both go their separate ways. Soon after, the day arrives for the selection of participants for the main event, and many men gather to fight, bet, or simply watch. The Bushin Festival then begins, and the winners of the preliminary fights are announced. Sid and his friend are also present, while Sid watches his friend being very busy collecting battle data, deciding how he will place his bets. During the fights, a man called Gold Guild, known as the Unbeatable Legend, appears, and Sid's friend recognizes him immediately and praises him, while Sid shows confusion for never having heard of him. Gold, who prefers to be called Master Gold, boasts, saying that he never fails to tabulate data and analyzes every detail of the fights. According to him, this is possible because he can see the energy level of the fighters with his own eyes. The man basically has those Dragon Ball devices that let you see other people's power, except instead of glasses, it is his own eye. Meanwhile, it is almost time for Sid to fight, so he goes disguised as an ordinary man. Sid is placed to fight against an extremely strong man called Gonzal. and everyone believes he will be defeated easily. Sensei Gold assumes the same, evaluating that Sid will lose due to his weak appearance and the fact that his energy is only 33. However, to everyone's surprise, Sid defeats Gonzal in the blink of an eye, securing his victory. At the same time, Annie Rose also watches the fight and is very surprised at how he managed to defeat such a large man with only one punch. The boy is like Saitama. Observing the result, Gold comments to Sid's friend that he will face the boy in the next battle, believing that he will be unbeatable. After leaving the ring with the winner announced, Sid discreetly returns to his original form, without anyone noticing, thus ending that day. Later, while he was taking a nap, his friend knocks on the door, holding a newspaper. He informs him that Princess Rose stabbed Lord Perth, the man who was going to be her husband, and fled. Meanwhile, Princess Alexia and Natsumi remain in the office, focused on finding Princess Rose. Eventually, they discover that she escaped to the northern side of the royal capital, which means she may still be inside the city. Natsumi explains to Princess Alexia that the Kingdom of Oriana wishes to resolve the case as a minor domestic matter and that it also sent a message to the Kingdom of Midgar, asking it not to interfere, since they intend to find their daughter on their own. With this information, both begin to suspect foul play, because Princess Rose is an exchange student, which would make it fair for her to be judged under Midgar law. If that happens, it would directly affect the relationship between the kingdoms, so they will not want to risk it. It is said that Lord Perth is the second son of the Duke of the Kingdom of Oriana, which would mean an extremely severe punishment for Rose if she were arrested for such a crime. Even so, Alexia states to Natsumi that, because Rose is royalty, she cannot be sentenced to death. In any case, they want Princess Rose to be found so they can hear her side of the story. To make the situation very clear, Natsumi comments that Rose never mentioned anything about what was happening between her and her fiancé. In her opinion, this must be because Rose does not want their involvement to cause conflict between the two kingdoms, which would make it very reasonable for her to step back from the matter. Alexia refuses to accept this, stating that it is not right to abandon her sister in this way. Natsumi clarifies that her intention is only that they carefully plan their next steps, and this greatly irritates Alexia, who questions whether Natsumi is foolish for saying that they still need to find her. Unable to respond, Natsumi is grabbed by her clothes, dropping the paper. While she begs, pretending to be afraid, Alexia states that she knows she is acting, and says that she would kill her if she let her go, only to worry about her position. Even so, Alexia recognizes that Rose does not wish to involve them in her problems, but insists that they need to do something to help her. Since they decided to work together, they must also support each other when necessary, and Princess Alexia states this to Natsumi, who agrees and promises to gather information, in addition to investigating some rumors she heard about Rose's fiancé. After that, Princess Alexia leaves the office, determined to do everything in her power to bring her sister back. After her departure, Natsumi calls one of the members of Shadow Garden, who seems to work secretly for her. Natsumi asks her to gather information about Lord Perth and about the royal family of Oriana, believing that the princess needs data before acting amid so many variables. Shortly afterward, she returns with new information, reporting that Princess Rose arrived at an underground ruin. The place consists of a complex network of tunnels, becoming an ideal hideout. Upon receiving the update, Natsumi orders that Rose be closely monitored and that any information be recorded and passed on to her. Then the day of our Dear Bushin festival arrives, and everyone is seated in the arena when the battles begin. Sid and his friend are also there. However, Sid's mind is not on the fight, but on the newspaper that is in his hands, which reports the incident involving Princess Rose. Then his thoughts already shift to his ambition to use his power as the eminence in shadow to achieve his objectives, including the idea of obtaining a fortune through bets. Sid imagines a secret war unfolding in parallel to the tournament and feels that he will act exactly in this scenario, using his disguise. With this in mind, he leaves to prepare for his turn, and along the way, already in disguise, he meets an elf called Beatrix. She is wearing a hood and stops when crossing paths with Sid and asks if he knows a beautiful elf, daughter of her deceased sister, stating that she sensed her scent on him. To clarify it, she comments that the girl looks a lot like her. When informed, Sid says he cannot see her face because of the hood. Beatrix removes it, and internally Sid recognizes that the person she is looking for is Alpha. But he decides to lie, saying that he does not know anyone. To test him, Beatrix draws her sword and moves to cut off his head. But Sid is smart, and he knows she will stop a moment before, so he pretends to be frightened and falls to the ground. She apologizes for scaring him and reaches out her hand to help him and comments that she thought he was stronger. Even so, she says that he has a good hand and soon he will become much stronger, and right after that she walks away toward the arena. In another place we see Annie Rose watching the battle accompanied by Quentin, a muscular guy from before. He also came to watch the fights, and they are talking about Sid's victory, who in reality is an ordinary man. They wonder how he managed to defeat such a strong man, something that to Annie Rose does not seem to have been just luck. The conversation continues around how fast Sid won, everything happening in the blink of an eye, to the point that nobody could understand exactly what he did. Annie Rose states that the only thing she could clearly remember is that his right hand moved. For her, this was probably a decisive factor that made him defeat his opponent. Although many believed that he used some kind of magic in the previous fight, Quentin comments that Sid's battle that day will certainly help reveal the truth, since he thinks the boy is using some talisman or magic. Meanwhile, Sid's next opponent will be Gold, a fighter who has never lost a single match. Annie Rose comments that although she had been assigned to fight Gold earlier, he refused to accept the match, since he is a complete coward and only fights those whose power is lower than his, whom he is sure he will beat, and since Sid in disguise has 33 power, this is the perfect prey for him. Soon after, they enter the arena and are ready to fight. The people around comment on Sid's weak appearance, saying that he should not even have signed up. Little do they know that the leader of Shadow Garden is right there in front of them. Anyway, Annie Rose wonders how Professor Gold cannot perceive Sid's true strength through his energy. For Gold, Sid's energy level seems to be below 33, which leads him to believe it will be a very easy fight. The battle then begins with Gold charging with all his strength, trying to strike Sid with his sword. To everyone's surprise, Sid dodges the blow with extreme speed and hits Gold with the hilt of his own sword. Annie Rose and Quentin, seeing this, start discussing how he managed to escape from that attack. Annie Rose tries to explain what she saw, that Sid apparently tilted his neck just a little to the side when he was cracking it, and this happened at the exact moment of the attack, and this ends up leaving the muscular guy shocked, since he refuses to believe what he just heard. How the guy managed to dodge an attack while cracking his neck does not even make sense. Annie Rose adds that everything seemed like a perfect coincidence, which makes it even harder to accept what they witnessed. Both refuse to believe that it is true, since an ordinary human would not be able to do it with such naturalness and speed. Humiliated by the situation, since the guy simply let him slip away, Gold becomes very irritated and steps back for a moment to compose himself. He tells Sid that he lost a chance at humiliation, since he could have defeated him right there. Annoyed by the fact that Sid is not showing any remorse, Gold starts shouting, ordering him to kneel and beg like the loser he is, saying that not doing so would be blasphemy. Sid remains standing calmly, without even caring about what he is saying. Angry and overcome by pride, Gold releases his full power, the power of the dragon, surrounded by an intense golden light. He charges to finish Sid once and for all. But once again, to everyone's astonishment, Sid simply sneezes a second before being struck. At the same instant, Gold's power dissipates, and he is thrown backward, falling hard to the ground. The crowd watches in absolute shock, unable to believe what has just happened. Annie Rose, however, does not seem very satisfied. She feels that Sid did not show any clear visual manifestation of his power. Even so, she wonders exactly how he managed to defeat Gold without even touching him. Finally, she remembers the moment when Sid sneezed, since he did it with his sword pointed forward. Coincidentally, Gold's speed combined with his power made him hit Sid's sword, and the impact caused his own power to turn against himself. This answer does not please the muscular guy very much, who states that if Sid keeps winning like this, he himself will face him in the preliminary finals, to then show everyone who Sid really is. Right after the muscular guy leaves, Annie Rose keeps trying to repeat Sid's movements, cracking and sneezing at the same time, and this scene is very funny. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Oriana, Lord Perth and Princess Rose's fiancé talk with Princess Iris about the safety of the Bushin tournament and the preparations for the final. Iris comments on her surprise at Lord Perth's sudden recovery, saying that the state he is in now is very different from the exaggerated reports they heard earlier. Lord Perth treats this as a joke, stating that everyone is worrying too much, maybe because of Princess Alexia's previous kidnapping. The king now presents comments on how proud he felt when Princess Iris went to rescue Alexia alone during that incident. Lord Perth then intervenes, stating that Oriana's family problems will be resolved internally and without external help. He offers to deal with the situation personally, and this leaves Princess Iris deeply irritated, but she holds herself back, since it seems that Lord Perth is only provoking her. The next day, the fights continue in the arena, and Sid defeats his opponent, the muscular Quentin, once again surprising the audience with his inexplicable powers. Meanwhile, several people comment on how he defeated Gold the previous day and now earns another victory. With this, Sid, or Mundane Man, officially qualifies for the main tournament. Annie Rose also carefully observes the way he defeated Quentin, and decides that she needs to find out how he did that. After Sid is announced as the winner and leaves the arena, Annie Rose waits for him over the inner passage of the stadium. As he goes to change clothes, she comments that she never imagined seeing him in the main tournament, and congratulates him for that. Right after, Annie Rose asks how he managed to defeat so many fighters considered unbeatable, without apparently spending any energy. Sid, however, decides not to answer and simply walks away. Determined to learn his secret, Annie Rose tries to stop him, showing that she can also crack her neck. Sid just ignores it and keeps walking, and somewhere else we see Princess Rose, who was well hidden in the tunnels, but she ends up being located by some knights. Even so, she manages to get rid of some of them and runs through a dark passage. Back in the arena, Sid falls to the ground after being struck by his opponent's sword. The opponent says that he used only a small fraction of his incredible power and states that Sid is weak. Sid starts thinking of several awesome catchphrases to say right there, but soon he wakes up in his room. All of this was just a dream. He says that even so he is still adjusting what to say and starting to get confused, realizing that he needs to train more to master this completely. This guy is completely crazy in the head. Right after that, his friend shows up at his house and starts knocking on the door, and Sid complains to himself about how the people around him can interfere with his plans, since his social circle keeps getting bigger and bigger. And then his friend announces that they are going to get rich, because the student council president, Rose, is now a wanted criminal. He explains that there is a reward of 10 million for capturing her alive, or 500,000 if they provide useful information to the police. He insists that they go after her, handing a flyer to Sid. Sid steps away and asks why so much excitement, and his friend answers that he is out of money and desperately needs funds. The guy spent everything on the little tiger game, and now has nothing. Soon after, Sid opens the window and asks about a bet he had made. His friend panics and holds Sid by the window. While shouting that he really needs money, Sid reflects to himself and decides that he supports the student council president and her escape. He even comes to admire her for the courage to act like a rebel capable of even trying to kill her own fiancé. Immediately, Sid goes back inside the house to change clothes, since he sees the girl outside. Soon after, he pulls his friend through the window, and both fall into the bushes outside, where he escapes from the girl. A short time later, they head to the train station, where Sid sees the student council wanted posters spread around the place. He thinks that he needs to buy some time while he waits for his sister to leave his house. He begins to wonder whether Rosie really managed to escape safely, and if he had the chance, he would like to ask her why she stabbed her own fiancé. As he watches people passing by, Sid remembers how he was forced to learn piano in his previous life and how that ended up being useful to keep others away. He reflects on the misunderstandings that people have about each other and how memorizing piano pieces helped, since people tend not to care about him when he is playing. He continues taking piano lessons and realizes that this has been a great advantage. Sid then thinks again about his desire to become an eminence in the shadows, and he begins to fantasize about a soft piano tone being used to create the perfect atmosphere during battle. In his wild imagination, he sees himself playing a soundtrack while fighting as an eminence in the shadows, believing that this would make it much more dramatic. He even questions how Moonlight Sonata can exist in this world, since it is by Beethoven, so he concludes that someone must have reincarnated before him and brought the sonata there. Soon after, he enters a building where a woman is playing the piano and stops to appreciate the music. He starts to list in his mind the pieces she performs and admires her dress, observing her from head to toe. Right after the performance ends, the crowd applauds warmly, and later that same day, Y has tea with Sid while her maid brushes her hair. She comments that she felt deeply honored that he went to watch her performance. Sid asks if the piece she played was Moonlight Sonata, and Y confirms it, saying that she likes the music very much and that she learned it from everything he taught her. Sid thinks to himself that in fact he never taught her, but even so he appreciates the fact that Y likes the same things he does. Y thanks Sid for all the help she received, highlighting that thanks to him she managed to establish important connections with influential people, such as renowned pianists and composers. She continues telling how she began collecting awards for the songs he taught her. Sid thinks to himself that it is absurd to receive and grant awards for plagiarized music. Even so, Y assures that she will fulfill her duty and will treat the music with the dignity of sublime masterpieces. Sid congratulates her and soon after asks if she knows where Rose ran away to. Y answers that this is under Beta's responsibility, so she does not have many details. Even so, she comments that she heard that Rose took refuge in the tunnels under the royal capital. Y even offers to send someone to Beta, but Sid says that it is not necessary, since he obtained all the information he needed. When leaving the room, Sid comments that Y looks very beautiful, as always, and she blushes immediately, thanking him and saying that he is very humble. Already outside, Sid reflects that he said something pleasant to her because she also said something that made him happy, so he just wanted to return the gesture. The man is very gentlemanly. There is no way around it. At the train station, Alexia and Beta go down the stairs while talking about the cult of Diablos and Lord Peth. She believes that Lord Peth is a member of the court and knows that many people are probably aware of this, but there is not much concrete evidence against him. Alexia tells Beta that her father warned her not to get involved with the divine teachings. The two also discuss the king of Oriana and how his daughter shamed him by stabbing her fiancé and running away. Then Beta asks Alexia where those stairs lead, and Alexia answers that they lead to the underground passages of the capital. She explains that the maps and codes of those routes were lost, turning the place into a true labyrinth. Beta then wonders why they are going there, and Alexia answers in a dry tone that it is to get rid of Beta's body. When she notices that Beta does not react, Alexia says that she was joking and is surprised to see that Beta was not frightened. After hearing Alexia say that she is not afraid, Beta decides to shout that Alexia should not kill her, just to pretend that she is afraid. Alexia then explains that it is possible that Rose escaped to the underground passages and that they are there precisely to look for her. Beta asks if Alexia told anyone about going down there and scolds her for having dragged her into that situation. Meanwhile, Princess Rose is sitting there on the ground, completely exhausted, with her blood-stained sword resting at her side. She is very breathless and weak, and she begins to remember everything that happened, questioning what more she could have done and recalling the state in which she found her father. He was in very bad shape. He seemed to be being controlled. And in that moment of fury she felt, she attacked her fiancé. She remembers the guard's pursuit and how she managed to escape. Rose even tries to console herself, believing that she made the right choice and that she had no other option. Even so, she begins to blame herself, saying that she put her homeland in danger. She starts thinking of several ways to avoid war, and even considers surrendering. It is then that she looks in her pocket and sees paper that Sid gave her and wonders if he heard what happened, and if even so, after everything, he will still believe her. In her thoughts, she only wished to eliminate Lord Perth and all his corrupt allies in order to save her father. In her imagination, after that, she could marry Sid and live happily ever after. But I think Sid would not want that. The man likes to live alone. Right after, she scolds herself for thinking as if the world were a fairy tale, and the pain in her chest intensifies and she screams in suffering. Apparently, she is cursed with something here. When she is about to faint, she begins to hear the Moonlight Sonata echoing in the distance and starts following the sound. In a short time, she sees Shadow playing the piano. He asks if she wishes to fight for her people, and Rose answers that she wishes to fight and defeat the enemies who threaten her homeland. She also declares that she wants to protect her father and her people from the members of the cult of Diablo. Shadow then offers her power and immediately heals her with his magic, and Rose is very surprised to see that the wound in her chest disappeared instantly. He gives her a massive amount of power, making her question what is flowing inside her body. Then she surrenders herself completely to that supernatural force, and in just a few moments, she becomes absurdly powerful. Before disappearing, Shadow instructs her to take revenge on those who plan to seize her kingdom. After giving her this advice, the eminence in Shadow disappears, leaving only a black feather on the piano. Shortly afterward, some members of the cult of Diablos attack Rose, but she uses the magic newly granted by Shadow to defeat them all. Then she goes up the stairs and soon meets Alexia and Beta on the way. Alexia begins to question her about the reason for stabbing her fiancé, and also asks about the explosion of magical energy they felt. Rose answers that she obtained a new power and then apologizes to Alexia, saying that she did not want to involve her in all of that. Alexia shouts, demanding answers, but Rose insists that if she tells the truth, Alexia will be dragged into something much greater. At that moment, Alexia reminds Rose of the promise they made to each other in the sanctuary. Rose answers gently, saying that she does not want to lose her friend, because people would start to see Alexia as someone evil and wicked just for siding with Rose. Suddenly, Alexia becomes enraged, throws the lamp she was holding, and draws her sword to attack Rose. She declares that she will obtain answers, even if Rose does not want to talk. Rose blocks the attack and the two begin to fight, using magic and sword. Alexia states that she is no longer just a spectator, and during the clash, Beta picks up the lamp and Alexia falls. Beta immediately blocks the great wave of energy that approaches. Rose holds Alexia in her arms, questioning when she became strong enough to face her. She hands Alexia to Beta and apologizes, saying that she needs to leave. Beta answers that she will not stop her, because she has no right to do so. And she also tells Princess Rose that the alliance between them was not such a bad idea after all. She wishes her success and states that in the future they will meet again. After that, Princess Rose runs up the stairs and Beta begins to wonder whether she would be the same person chosen by Lord Shadow. Meanwhile, Sid keeps walking back home while enjoying the beautiful piano melody. He remembers when he heard Y play and how that sounded beautiful to him. He thinks that he would like to have his own piano to be able to do these performances, instead of borrowing one. While he reflects, he is suddenly interrupted by a young woman who stands in front of him. When he raises his eyes, Sid realizes that it is his sister. He immediately smiles and greets her, and he is in trouble. His sister had been waiting for him until now. In the apartment, Sid's sister sits with him on his bed, and, to his surprise, she begins to strangle him. She asks if he knows what she was thinking while waiting in front of his dormitory. Sid answers that he does not, and she tightens her hands even more. While she waited, she only thought about beating him repeatedly, while also thinking about killing him, and the longer she waited, the more her anger doubled. And Sid reflects to himself that he has just learned that anger really grows with time. She then says that she knows he was thinking that she does not care, and when Sid is about to answer that this is not true, she squeezes his neck even more. Then she asks if he would like to find out how long a human being can hold their breath before dying. Sid, in a mocking tone, says that when someone is strangled, the person faints because the artery is blocked, not because of lack of breathing. At that moment, the girl becomes even angrier and squeezes his neck even harder, making the boy even drool. His sister then says that he had promised they would go back home together during the summer vacation. And Sid asks if that is true. She answers that he always acted as if the promises made to her meant nothing, eventually breaking them. Sid states that he will try to become a new person, and she immediately releases one of her hands, allowing him to breathe again. Then she says that he has only one more chance, and Sid asks what she is talking about. She then shows some tickets for the Bushin festival, and she says that it is practically impossible to get a ticket, and orders him to go to the festival. Sid asks if she will not be absent from the festival, and she answers that she was chosen to represent the academy in place of Princess Rose, since she is on the run. She squeezes his neck once more and asks if he did not already know that. Sid immediately answers that he knew and only asked to confirm. His sister then warns that if he wishes to live for a long time, he must stop neglecting his older sister. She states that she will be the champion, and that he must be present to watch. And finally she releases his neck, and Sid goes back to gasping. Shortly afterward, Princess Alexia and Beta arrive at the apartment, and Beta asks if Princess Iris has already packed her bags. Alexia answers that yes, saying that Iris moved abroad, as she had mentioned, since she wanted to spend some time doing research. Natsumi, or Beta, says goodbye and leaves, and Alexia then notices a sheet of paper on the table. She picks it up and reads it aloud, commenting that her sister always leaves clues when the note refers to swordsmanship. At that moment, she hears a loud noise coming from outside the apartment and realizes that it is firework. Alexia tells herself that she does not need anyone's pity, because she herself no longer feels sorry for herself. The fireworks fill the sky above the stage, while people get excited and prepare for the Bushin festival. Sid then enters the tournament and is asked to hand over his sword. He begins to look for a place to sit and realizes that he is in the VIP section. Upon finding a seat, a young woman asks him what his name is, and Sid introduces himself humbly, bowing, and says that he believes he is sitting in the wrong place. She mentions his surname and says that he must be Akane's brother, and then comments that she plans to add his sister to her order as soon as she graduates. Sid is surprised to learn that she knows his sister, and the young woman says that he is in the right place and knows that his sister must have given him the ticket. Sid then sits down, and she comments that he is owed an apology for the trouble caused in the Xenon incident, the one in which he was tortured. Sid answers politely that it is all right and that she does not need to worry about it. The young woman then informs him that the talks about resolving the conflict between the royal family and the Marquis's family have already been finalized. Iris adds that as Alexia's sister she would also like to apologize. This leaves the students around them completely surprised, and Sid begins to think that this important person is apologizing to him, and concludes that this is without a doubt the worst aspect of the life of a background character. Princess Iris continues by asking whether the incident did not affect his friendship with Alexia, her sister. Sid answers that he did not even have a friendship with her. He only picked up some coins that she had thrown to him. Iris does not quite understand the comment, so Sid explains that he and Princess Alexia used to play puppies together, and he recalls how Alexia made him look like a dog, throwing coins and ordering him to fetch them. Iris comments that Princess Alexia should have attended the tournament but ended up canceling at the last minute. One of the students asks Iris which fighter she is interested in, and she answers that it is Annie Rose. Iris says that she observed her fighting and knows that she is a traveler on a pilgrimage, learning new skills. She also adds that it is her first time at the Bushin Festival, and the students sitting beside them start arguing that Annie Rose will defeat Princess Iris. Upon hearing this, Iris says that there is no reason for concern, because she will win the tournament, and the fate of the Bushin style is in her hands. She states that she will do her best to protect the pride of her land and her people. And right afterwards Sid asks if there is any other fighter worth watching. This makes the two students look at him closely and whisper to each other, saying that he is Princess Alexia's boyfriend. Iris immediately introduces him as Claire's brother. The students start to praise him sarcastically, saying that he does not resemble his sister at all. They advise him to act with caution and not have strange ideas, such as marrying for convenience. Sid then mentions a fighter known as the Mundane Man, and the students say that he is not material for the main tournament. Iris comments that she has not seen any of his matches, and one student explains that he does not pose a great threat because he is extremely weak, having only his speed as his strong point. They stress that he is no match for Narrows, who is a skilled fighter. Then they all begin to discuss another fighter, Lady Beatrix. Iris explains that she is an elven swordswoman acclaimed as a goddess of war, and she adds that Lady Beatrix was the first champion of the Bushin Festival, and that she is currently in the capital. Sid begins to wonder why he did not know that Lady Beatrix was so famous, and then he stands up and starts to walk away, and Iris asks where he is going. He answers that he needs to go to the restroom, since he is very pressed. And while walking through the corridors, Sid starts to hear footsteps and realizes that someone strong is nearby. Suddenly, someone calls him from behind, and when he turns around, he sees that it is Beatrix. She asks if he is trying to avoid her, and Sid answers that he is not. Right afterward, she asks if he has seen any elf who looks like her since the last time they met, and Sid answers that he has not seen anyone like her, the boy acting cynical. The two briefly comment about the tournament, exchange small gifts, and say goodbye. Meanwhile, Lord Perth approaches to sit beside Princess Iris. She says that the seats are reserved only for students, but he answers that the students would learn a lot by seeing him talking with her in public. He begins to provoke her, and Iris reminds him that he is already engaged, and Lord Perth answers that he is only engaged and that they are merely going through a misunderstanding, and that she will certainly return to him. Perth also informs her that the king will not be able to attend that day, but he will be present for the matches on the following day. He also asks whether Iris's father, King Klaus, is absent, and she answers that he will also attend the next day. Lord Perth notes that it is a coincidence that both kings are not present on the same day. He then points to Annie Rose and tells Iris that he intends to invite her to fight in his name. Iris answers that she is also interested in Annie Rose and plans to encourage her to fight for her own country. Lord Perth comments that Midgar already has dark knights capable of protecting the kingdom, and Iris tells Lord Perth that she notices something very interesting in the Mundane Man. Although he appears to be a weak fighter, Lord Perth answers that she understands nothing, says Grima, and soon the match begins. Annie Rose starts to think about how she can defeat the Mundane Man. She considers keeping her distance, but is surprised by his speed. While she was calculating her attack, the Mundane Man strikes suddenly, causing her to lose the match instantly. Lord Perth comments that Iris's instincts were correct, and they discuss how he applied his abilities and begin to evaluate him. Lord Perth asks whether Iris will face the mundane man in the next round, and she answers that yes, she will. He asks whether she is confident in defeating him, and Iris states that it is not appearance that decides the duel. She adds that the mundane man is far too weak, and that although he defeated Annie Rose, he depends only on speed and is still not on her level. Iris says that she does not like to lose, and therefore the mundane man cannot defeat her. She apologizes and tells Lord Perth that she will go prepare for the match, and as she walks away, Lord Perth orders a servant to discover the origin of the mundane man. He comments that he suspects that he came from the underworld, and that if the city of Simley is behind him, the situation may become quite complicated. Meanwhile, Annie Rose calls the mundane man, and while he walks through the corridors, she says that she accepts the defeat and believes that that match helped to improve her skills. They shake hands, and he turns to leave. But before he goes, Annie Rose asks who he really is. He answers that he is only a fool who abandoned everything in search of strength, and Annie Rose comments that if he continues fighting well, he may be called to defend a country and live under the spotlight, being recognized as a true warrior. Sid, disguised then, says that he is not ready for such a showy lifestyle. And soon afterward, Princess Iris wins her first match. Using a powerful magical ability, she strikes her opponent with tremendous force and causes a great impact on the field, and the match ends very quickly. At the end, Iris spots Lady Beatrix and starts running toward her. She stops her and asks if she really is Beatrix, the goddess of war. The elf then asks who she is, and Iris introduces herself as the Princess of Midgar. Beatrix tells Princess Iris that after eating something she will feel fine, and offers her some bread. Princess Iris politely refuses, remaining standing, visibly confused. On the way back home, Sid reflects on how to manage to use his sword skills without resorting to Shadow's power. He evaluates that he has already completed about 70% of his objectives at the Bouchan Festival, but even so he still needs to figure out how to finish the rest. For him, the simplest solution would be to win everything. However, he believes his most striking scene will be the next battle against Iris. Sid wishes to defeat her and simply disappear. He imagines that defeating someone recognized as the great warrior and then leaving the stage would make him a true eminence in the shadows. He also thinks about what it would be like to follow a darker path, and concludes that there would be many directions he could follow, and that all of them would be incredible. Suddenly, he hears a voice saying that he seems very happy, and Sid answers that he really does seem to be. When he looks, he realizes it is his older sister, and she asks whether he enjoyed watching her fight, and in that instant Sid panics, realizing he had completely forgotten his sister's match, and now, for sure, he is going to die. Soon after, we see Princess Rose, who is looking at herself in a broken mirror, observing the happy meal that Sid gave her. And in a flashback, we see Princess Iris defeating a commander with a single blow, and the other knights are deeply impressed. Some, however, do not seem very surprised, since they have always believed she possesses extraordinary talent. After the battle, Iris walks away, remembering when she was called the pride of the Bunchen method. Many even whispered that with her at their side, Midgar would always be safe. Over time, she was told that the local citizens could deal with orders in their own regions, discouraging her from traveling to take care of them, especially because this should not interfere with the work of the Association of Dark Knights. Because of that, Iris was encouraged to leave that matter aside and focus on goals considered more important. Later, upon joining the Knights, Iris is welcomed enthusiastically, and people admire her as she begins to be called the pride of the Kingdom of Midgar. Despite this, she feels pressured and does everything possible to maintain control. All those repressed emotions led her to finish the commander with a decisive blow. She feels irritated with him for having ordered her to be only a spectator and to do nothing. For Iris, that was a way to express everything she had been holding back. The commander also warns that without magic, even she would be powerless against certain enemies. When Iris spoke with her father about this, demanding the chance to exercise real authority, he asked her to be cautious and explained that acting on impulse would only create more enemies. Even if her intentions were correct, there was no guarantee that those who did not know the context would understand it. Furthermore, the Boston Festival was approaching and many guests were arriving in the kingdom. He feared presenting action as hostile to divine teachings, and none of this seemed to shake Iris, who remained determined to pursue her objectives. Her father, however, believed that she was only desperate to prove that she was right, and feared that her actions would put the kingdom at risk. Even so, all of this only strengthened Iris's determination to obtain results and prove her capability. Meanwhile, as part of the preparations for the festival, a banquet was held and Sid receives an invitation. He was amazed by the comfort provided by VIP status and praised the possibility of ordering anything created and being promptly served without additional cost. While he enjoys his coffee, his thoughts are interrupted by Princess Iris, who sits beside him and asks whether he came to cheer for his sister Claire once again, and Sid confirms it, questioning himself about why she decided to sit there again. And he hears Iris say that she was released from her official duties that day. She notices that he is drinking coffee and praises the aroma, although she complains about the bitter taste. As a solution, Sid asks if she has ever tried adding milk or sugar, turning the drink into something like sweetened café au lait. Although suspicious, he claims that it is a magic spell capable of making any coffee taste exactly the same. When Iris naively tries it, she ends up finding the drink delicious. While they eat, Sid feels satisfied for sharing an elegant breakfast with the princess. Soon after, a slight commotion takes over the place when the guards stop a woman from entering while carrying her sword. Seeing from afar, Sid thinks he recognizes her. While the guards insist that she leave the weapon, Princess Iris approaches and says that she was the one who invited her. She then introduces the woman as Beatrix, the goddess of war. Upon hearing that, those present are shocked, recognizing her as a legendary master swordswoman. Hearing the title, Sid becomes excited, imagining what it would be like to be called a legendary master. Princess Iris leads Beatrix to a seat close to hers, which makes Sid quite uncomfortable. He wonders why the two chose to sit near him. And meanwhile, the other men begin asking several questions to Lady Beatrix. One of them asks why she had not appeared in public for so long and why she chose that moment to return. Beatrix answers that she is looking for someone, her niece, who looks a lot like her. She asks if anyone has seen her, and instead of answering normally, the men reply that they would never forget the face of someone as beautiful as her. Beatrix then remembers the rumors that elves had been seen in the kingdom, but the men insist that they have not seen any. Hearing this, Princess Iris apologizes to Beatrix, explaining that she brought her in the hope that she would find her missing niece, but unfortunately it was not very helpful. In a lighter tone, the knights ask if there is a competitor who has caught her attention, and to everyone's surprise Beatrix gives a name, Sid. The comment provokes murmurs around them, with everyone questioning the reason. Beatrix states that she is sure he will become much stronger, even if he himself does not believe it. One of the knights counters, saying that although Sid is a student of the academy, he has no potential to become a knight and does not even come close to his sister's level. To ease the mood, Princess Iris comments that if Beatrix thinks so, then perhaps she is right. In agreement, the others begin to await Sid's future. Even so, they wonder how someone apparently so naive like Beatrix can be the legendary goddess of war. However, because she is Princess Iris's guest, they end up being forced to accept that truth. Sid, on the other hand, sees things very differently. For him, Beatrix certainly possesses everything necessary to be called the goddess of war. Her appearance, personality, title, and strength are natural, without exaggerations or ornaments. Precisely because of that, it becomes difficult to perceive how powerful she truly is. Meanwhile, Lord Perth administers the daily dose of medicine to Princess Rose's father. Although he has no complaints about the effectiveness of the drug, he is bothered by a strong odor the king gives off. For that reason, he orders the guards to cover him with perfume. Then he shows satisfaction when confirming that the drug has turned the king into a complete puppet, able to act only according to his orders. This makes Lord Perth feel a kind of pity for the king. Even so, he remains confident that his daughter, Princess Rose, will return to save her father, who is now in a pitiful state. Hearing his daughter's name, the king tries to pronounce it with difficulty. Lord Perth comments that he would not have minded letting Rose go free if she had been a good girl and handed over the keys. However, according to him, Rose began to show signs of possession, becoming ideal material for experiments by the cult of Diablos. After that, he leads the weakened king to the throne room, and while they walk, Lord Perth remains confident that the princess will not appear. That will greatly facilitate using the king's influence to deal with the kingdom of Midgar. His goal is to provoke a war between Midgar and Oriana, which will end up leading to the destruction of the latter. Even if that affects his current position, he shows that he does not care much. Apparently, Lord Perth has already made arrangements to install a puppet leader as the next ruler of Midgar, thus guaranteeing greater chances of success when carrying out his plan during Princess Iris's match. Even so, he has a very unexpected obstacle. Princess Iris will face a fighter known as the Mundane Man. Lord Perth investigated that man's past, but found absolutely nothing. This leads him to believe that the Mundane Man is only a resident of the underworld. which makes him potentially dangerous. He wonders what the real purpose of that man would be in participating in the tournament. Even so, because he has deployed a large number of soldiers around the kingdom, he feels relatively calm, and that calm is slightly shaken by his concern about the Shadow Garden. While he wonders how they will react to his plans, he suspects that they are working with Princess Rose, which deeply bothers him. Suddenly, his thoughts are interrupted by Beatrix, who comments that the king does not seem to be in good condition. Annoyed, Lord Perth immediately orders the guards to remove her, and Princess Iris intervenes, informing them that the woman is her guest and that she is the goddess of war. Beatrix, upon hearing that, the Lord is shocked, and Beatrix apologizes. But he quickly apologizes in return, claiming that he did not know exactly who she was. Even without considering that a valid justification, he encourages her to relax and enjoy the festival. However, apparently still in control, Lord Perth begins to wonder what the goddess of war would be doing at that tournament, among all possible places. To prevent her from interfering with his plans, he starts looking for an opportunity to eliminate her. However, he knows that this will not be easy, since Beatrix is even more skilled with the sword than Princess Iris herself, who is considered the best swordswoman in the kingdom. The woman is simply the goddess of war, and the man wants to eliminate her. Truly reckless. Well, faced with that, he wonders if it will really be possible to assassinate the King of Midgar, as he had planned. But on the positive side, he remains confident that everything will work out if Princess Rose appears. If that happens, he intends to capture her and proceed with the war against Oriana, as planned. From a distance, Lord Perth observes a young man walking away discreetly. Realizing that it is Sid going to relieve himself, he does not give much importance to the fact, since he has no reason to worry about someone like him. Watching Claire fight, he is impressed by how exceptional she is. Although he recognizes her potential, he does not consider her a real threat. Even so, he thinks that everything would be simpler if everyone were at Claire's level. Shortly after, Claire wins her match and Princess Iris begins to prepare for her own. As she heads to the arena, a crowd begins to press around her, calling her name and asking her to win. The people's incessant voices give her strength to continue, especially when she hears the statements that the kingdom will be safe as long as she exists. Determined to meet those expectations, Iris knows that for that she must win that fight. However, when facing her opponent, the mundane man, she cannot feel even a trace of strength coming from him. Even so, she believes that there is something hidden inside him. Nevertheless, she is confident that she will be able to defeat him as soon as the fight begins, as long as she gives her very best. Although she is fully convinced that he is hiding something, she does not know what it is. Yet she is determined not to give him even a second to reveal that secret and intends to end everything with a single strike. That said, the announcer proclaims the beginning of the second match between Princess Iris and the mundane man. And the instant the fight begins, Iris simply sees her head being cut off. Fortunately, this is only a hallucination, but the shock is so great that it makes her immediately retreat, moving away from the mundane man. As he remains at a distance, Iris wonders how she could have been cut like that. After all, he had not even moved. The common man, still standing, calmly asks why she is not attacking. And looking around, Iris realizes that she instinctively moved away at the exact moment the fight began. This happened because she clearly felt death approaching, and ignoring that premonition, Iris regains her composure and draws her sword. Now she is determined to face him, because allowing him to notice her fear would only make him even more powerful. However, the moment she prepares to attack, she feels her leg being cut, and that makes her question whether everything is just an illusion, or if he really approached without her noticing. At that moment, Iris understands that the entire arena is within the range of his attack. Meanwhile, a young woman approaches the disguised VIP area, where the king and the nobles are seated. She is surprised not to find security guards. Instead, she sees the bodies of some members of the cult of Diablos and citizens tied up. Looking more closely, she notices the Shadow Sisters, who recognize her immediately and instruct her to proceed with her mission. At that moment, she removes her disguise, revealing herself as Princess Rose. Meanwhile, Princess Iris continues fighting against the common man, still seeing illusions of him cutting her, even while he remains still. Over time, she realizes that he is causing these hallucinations only with a look and a slight shift in his center of gravity. This makes her understand how powerful he really is. While trying to decide how to defeat him, the crowd begins to lose hope in her. Some start to believe that Princess Iris is afraid, and to prove the opposite, She uses all her strength and charges forward, ready to bring him down. As she approaches, Iris realizes that he is not even holding the sword. All of that was an illusion. However, it is already too late. The man dodges the attack, grabs her by the neck, and throws her to the ground. Only then does he draw his sword and declares that everything was only just beginning. Watching Iris lose the advantage in the fight, Lord Peth becomes irritated at seeing her being dominated by someone like him. Even so, he is impressed and afraid of the power of the mundane man, admitting that not even the cult of Diablos would have someone with such strength. At that moment, Princess Rose enters the hall, and upon seeing her, Lord Peth feels satisfied. The sick king is also pleased and asks her to come closer. Rose, in turn, states that she came to apologize for everything she has done, and for everything she will still do. And as a princess, she asks for permission to follow the path she believes in. Upon hearing this, the king forgives all her sins. This reaction leaves Lord Peth furious, since he had not ordered his puppet king to say that. After receiving forgiveness from her father, who is the king, Rose rushes forward to attack Lord Peth. In the blink of an eye, he uses the king himself as a shield, forcing Rose to kill her own father. Her father says that he loves her before leaving this world, and as a final act, she decides to take her own life. However, Lord Peth orders his guards to stop her, and at that instant, Lord Shadow appears, still in the form of the mundane man. He eliminates everyone, and it is at that moment that he reveals his true identity. However, the naive princess refers to him as the elegant bandit slayer, the one who saved her when she was a child. Rose praises him a lot for continuing to fight against evil from such a young age, but shows disappointment in herself for almost having given up. Lord Shadow tells her to raise her head, since the fight is not over yet. And when looking at the lifeless body of her father, Rose makes a firm decision and escapes from the place. Watching her leave, Lord Peth becomes furious and tries to follow her, but he is stopped by Shadow. Desperate, he calls for his guards, only to discover that they have all already been eliminated by the Shadow Garden girl. And then Beatrix says she will take the lead and attacks Shadow. Taking advantage of this opening, the coward Peth manages to escape. While Beatrix faces Shadow, Princess Iris is overtaken by rage, especially when she realizes that the mundane man she fought was actually Shadow in disguise, someone she had been searching for a very long time. The clash between Lord Shadow's and Beatrix's swords causes a massive explosion, creating panic among the citizens. The kingdom of Midgar is informed that the guests of honor were taken to a safe place. Even so, he doubts that the fight will remain limited to the stadium and considers declaring martial law. At that moment, he asks about Lord Peth's whereabouts, being informed that he is fleeing toward the kingdom of Oriana, with no intention of stopping at the embassy. When asking about the body of the king of Oriana, informed that it is under secure custody, the king orders that the body be treated with respect, and that on returning to Oriana they pass by Marquis Grant. Meanwhile, Shadow's battle with Beatrix continues, and the two seem to be at very similar levels of sword skills. Even so, Shadow demonstrates his superiority by performing very fast surprise attacks, leaving Beatrix increasingly worried. His movements are so fast that she can barely notice when he moves. When she expresses her uneasiness, Shadow replies that they are only getting started. And at that moment Iris arrives. She looks for an opportunity to join the fight, drawing her sword Dimitri, the engraved one of the ancient communes, and the poor thing really thinks she will have any chance against Shadow. Noticing her expression, Iris asks Shadow if he considers that sword unfair. To her surprise, he answers that he does not. He just did not expect that she would depend on such a weapon to win. This makes her furious, and she demands that he be quiet, and Iris then tries to strike him. But Shadow dodges her attacks without any effort. At the same time, he is also attacked by Beatrix, ending up face to face with the two extremely powerful warriors. Meanwhile, Princess Rose finally escapes from the palace. Even so, she begins to question where she should go from there. She considers returning to the royal capital and joining the resistance against the conspirators. At that moment, Alpha appears before her and presents her with two options. The first is for her to continue fighting alone. The second is to join the Shadow Garden. Since she does not have many options, she joins the Shadow Garden, and that is it. Now she is officially part of the Shadow Garden. Meanwhile, on the main stage, we are going to see the best fight of this anime, and one of my favorites from all animes. Shadow keeps facing the attacks of Iris and Beatrix, even fighting against both at the same time. He seems to be just having fun. He acts as if he is not even making any effort. And when Princess Iris delivers an attack, he comments that she possesses real potential. The fight moves from the skies to the sides of the buildings, until they land on the roof of a moving train. There, he advises them not to fall while they keep fighting. Princess Iris demands to know who Lord Shadow really is, and he answers that he is just Shadow, and that his form and name are his truth. This answer only makes her even more irritated. She is totally short-tempered. On the other hand, Beatrix introduces herself and asks if they have met before. He states that he never forgets a strong opponent, which leads Shadow to question whether both of them are worth being kept in his memories. At that moment, he launches a fire attack, forcing both to dodge. He feels frustrated, because magic does not work very well in common water. And then Iris tries a surprise attack, but Shadow dodges it, pushing her into the water with a powerful bicycle kick to the face. While fighting Beatrix, she ends up cutting his weapon in half, and the battle intensifies a lot, continuing through the city. Until then, Lord Shadow tries a surprise attack, but Beatrix blocks it, stating that she has already gotten used to the pattern. Impressed, Shadow acknowledges her sword skill, saying it is as good as the members of the Shadow Garden, but he states that her use of magic still leaves much to be desired. He then declares that he will show what true strength is, and fortunately for Beatrix, Princess Iris charges forward and interrupts the attack. After dodging Iris's strike, Shadow states that he cannot be defeated with borrowed strength. Then both decide to attack together, with Iris restraining Shadow and asking Beatrix to finish him. At that moment, she rushes in, causing a brief scare. However, Shadow lands an absurd knee strike on Iris and throws her to the ground. Right after that, Beatrix tries to launch her ultimate, but it does not work very well, and she is thrown to the ground too. He steps on their bodies, causing enormous pain. But even wounded, Iris regains her strength and accuses Shadow of causing destruction in the capital. She declares that everyone in the kingdom of Midgar is now his enemy and that he has nowhere left to run. And now, for sure, comes my favorite scene in the whole anime. Shadow starts laughing, and the simple fact that she believes he would be running away deeply offends him. In response, he says that the game is over and creates a huge barrier around everything, ready to launch his ultimate. At that moment, he demands that they watch what he calls his supreme attack, capable of shaking all the earth and tearing the sky. The absolute, all-powerful, and incomparable atomic. But after creating all that tension and making everyone soil their pants, he simply disappears. And when they look up, Iris and Beatrix see the clear sky, without any trace of Lord Shadow. That was just a small sample of all his power, showing that if he wanted, he could end the entire kingdom right there, out of nowhere. And realizing this, Iris screams in frustration, deeply disappointed for having nothing she can do. In another scene, we see Lord Peth, who is scolded by the leader of the cult of Diablos. Although he apologizes, he assures that as long as the royal family is under the control of the cult, Princess Rose will not be able to appear without leaving traces. He also believes that the kingdom of Oriana will fall into collapse after the king's death, which makes him confident that Rose will return. With no alternatives, the cult leader accepts his words, and meanwhile, the citizens of Oriana are devastated and begin to abandon the kingdom. Among them is Beatrix's ally, who before leaving, advises Iris not to become too obsessed with Shadow. Iris replies that she will be fine, and in parallel, the Sisters of the Shadow Garden show concern about Shadow's public action. However, they are informed that he is serving as a decoy to distract the kingdom of Midgar, preventing interference in Oriana. After confirming that they are in contact with all fronts and that Ida's unit is taking care of technical matters, they calm down. Fully prepared, they decide to carry out their work in the best way possible, now that Shadow has exposed himself publicly. Later, Shadow returns to his true form, Sid, catching a bus toward the school. During the trip, he asks his friend about Skell. Apparently, Skell had accepted a long-term job. What greatly bothers Sid, since the new school term has barely begun. Skell, in turn, continues praying, hoping for a chance to return to solid ground after getting a job as a fisherman. After hearing about what happened in the cities, Sid concludes that he must act more from the shadows from now on. He says this right after almost blowing up the entire city. This guy is really a jester. Well, in another scene, we see Princess Rose arriving at the new prison complex, where she awaits Lady Alpha. Upon meeting her, Alpha informs her that they will continue the journey on foot, hoping to reach their destination before nightfall. The two cross the mountains and enter the forest, and upon hearing about the region, Rose shows concern and asks whether the area is not infested with magical beasts. Lady Alpha then recounts how Lord Shadow defeated the Dragon of Nerva, being recognized as the ruler of that territory. Upon reaching the destination, Rose is shocked to discover that they are in the former royal capital, Alexandria. but now it is the Shadow Garden's operations base. There, Alpha introduces her to Lambda and states that she has a new recruit and orders that she be trained. Lambda, in turn, makes it clear that everything depends on Rose and that she must prove her worth. Without wasting time, she assigns her to a team, giving her the name 666. Next, Rose is stripped of her clothes and of everything that is precious to her. After that, she is told that she is nothing and nobody, and that she must completely abandon her previous life. At that moment, her mind can only think about Sid, but Lambda insists that she leave everything behind. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the formidable Shadow is playing the piano, convinced that he has fulfilled his purpose. He recognizes that acting in the shadows is essential to do what must be done, and he shows himself prepared to face the moment of awakening, which now approaches. And here we finish our recap. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and comment below if you want the second season. This is an anime that I like a lot, and it was very good to bring it here for you. I hope you enjoyed it. We are together. Stay with God. Thank you. See you in the next video.